Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I'll give Peter a second to get back there. I don't know if he needs me or not. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, January 6th, 2025. I'm calling to order the Rutland Select Board meeting. We are meeting in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library at 280 Main Street. This meeting is being recorded by Rutland Town staff. It's held in person. And we also are available on Zoom for live streaming, as well as being recorded and re-aired for local access television, and our social medias, YouTube and everything. If we can please start with the pledge. I believe allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're a 4-member board tonight. One member is on Zoom, Tom is on Zoom. Paul is unable to make tonight's meeting. So because, as usual, we will do everything as roll call vote. Tom, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to have a moment of silence. We've had some significant loss in town over the past month. We lost our beloved electrical inspector, Lester Grace. So we want to extend our condolences to his family as well as the entire town for that loss. And as I'm sure most of you know, one of our firefighters suffered a very significant loss. His wife, Kira, and his twin babies, James and Elizabeth Sullivan. So we would like to continue to wrap Pat and all of the fire department and dispatch and public safety and police department and entire town in our love and support, and continue to offer them love and strength as they navigate this significant loss. So if we can just have a moment of silence, please. And again, our deepest condolences go out to all the families affected by the tragic losses. Would any other board members like to say anything?
I think you covered it.
I think so. Thank you. Again, I believe there's support available through for public safety through the chiefs, as well as feel free to reach out to town administrator's office as well if any staff has any concerns or considerations. Again, I appreciate everyone's work and strength through the tough challenges. Moving into our agenda, planning board, would you like to open now or would you like to wait till we get through our minutes and everything?
It's up to you, you can open it now.
Might as well open
Open
it
at
now.
6.
Call to order the January 6th meeting of the planning board at 6:04 p.m.
Thank you. For the select board agenda, we have approval of treasury warrant 25-14 and 25-PW14. Austin, is there anything of significance? I noticed that this is 25-14, it's still, because it's the fiscal year, sorry. Sorry, guys. Alright, anyone have any questions or comments? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve Treasury Warrant 25-14 and 25-PW14.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second,
Motion is second. Roll call, Harry?
segment I.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. We have approval of meeting minutes December 16th, 2024. And that was a regular meeting, so I'll take them as two separate because I don't know that everyone was present at the joint FinCom meeting. So the meeting minutes for our regular scheduled but off Monday meeting of December 16th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve December 16th, 2024 meeting minutes as presented.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any conversation about them?
Good.
Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you, Tamika.
You're welcome.
And then we have the approval for the December 19th, 2024 meeting that was held with the school committee members and FinCom. I believe that was the meeting that FinCom had asked our elected school committee reps from to WRSD to attend, and it was kind of a little bit of a roundtable. I believe Tom, I believe you were absent on this one and Jen was on Zoom, I think. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented from December 19th, 2024.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Conversation?
Aye.
Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin abstain.
Whitman, aye. Thank you, Tamika. Is there anyone here for public comment? Name and address, please.
Jean Sigliano, 27 Susie Drive. I'm here to talk about the building use policy that I see is on the agenda as it relates to what was at town meeting with the proposed senior center that was too small and the recreation people wanting something. And I just want to put out there, it is possible to have a building that serves everybody. I worked in a place where we had seniors in the morning, a couple mornings a week we had toddlers and tots. In the evenings on Fridays, we had grade school kids. Another night, we had a teen program, and we rented it on the weekends. With the right layout and the right closet space, everybody's stuff can be there in designated closets, pulled out when it's needed, and put back. You can't do it when the main room is filled with things that belong in offices or closets. Currently, the Council on Aging, and I give this to you to go into the minutes, they're done with activities most times by noon. So that building is sitting empty, and we taxpayers are paying for it. Why can't more use happen in that building? There could be pickleball in there in the afternoons, it could still be for seniors even. There could be other activities, but that main room isn't set up to really share, nor are the other rooms, but there's no reason it can't be set up to share, or certainly a new building can't be set up to share among all the groups that need it.
Thank you, Jean. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Hearing none, is planning board, is your attendance, are you ready to go? I know we had talked about making sure that everybody that had an interest and ability to attend was here in time. I know it was
Yeah,
kind of.
Britton can't be here tonight, that's the only member, but everyone
Okay.
else is here.
Okay. Is the board amenable to taking the joint meeting with planning board out of order now? Since we have Roger from KP on as well as planning board here. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being amenable to, meeting together. I think that there's been some back and forth, and I think the meeting in our fall town meeting highlighted some need just for both boards to better understand the processes from which we're both operating in setting the warrant, and especially when it comes to zoning bylaw amendments or changes. So I appreciate that. Also, as you know, I believe the board, our select board is amenable to calling an additional special town meeting, given the obstacles around the Articles 10 and 11 at the citizens petition at the fall town meeting. So we also wanted to have that conversation with you jointly so that we were all kind of on the same page with that. So I guess if planning board, if you don't mind kind of explaining to us, I think the best way for you to receive any articles, zoning articles or anything to make sure that the process is followed accordingly. I know there's posting requirements that planning board is mandated by law to post.
So, John, have you given them?
Yeah, they got copies of the flow chart that we
Flow chart.
have as well.
Basically, I think this makes it pretty much straightforward. Zoning bylaw amendment can come from basically anyone. Town board committee, or even a citizen. A citizen can submit one, not even as a citizen's petition, I believe, if we agree to accept it.
Yes, they can come to the planning board and ask the
Yeah.
planning board to sponsor.
Something that's a little bit different, maybe in this town, is that the planning board does have a bylaw subcommittee. And upon receipt of any amendment, what the planning board does is they forward it to the bylaw subcommittee for review, and any modification or corrections or whatever, once they have finished their work, and it sounds like it's kind of circular, but it's then submitted back to the planning board for their action to submit it to the select board for inclusion on a warrant and for placing, holding a public hearing. And once it's on the warrant, goes to town meeting and it's approved, that's it. The one big difference is if it's a citizen's petition, as you can see by the flow chart, basically since the board is not allowed to modify a citizen's petition in any way, it skips over the first three of these steps, because it has to appear on the warrant exactly as the citizen has written it.
So, and I think that's where it gets difficult, because I know that you know, these can come in kind of late in the process, and it kind of throws off the timing, where if the bylaw subcommittee of the planning board or myself has been working on a bylaw for a while, we're kind of prepared for that. It's when something comes in late in the game, which it's legally allowed to, that can make things challenging. And I know, Leah, you and I talked about this last week. My normal practice has been to hold the required public hearing 2 meetings before town meeting to give bylaws a chance to be finalized and finished and completed. But we can open a public hearing as much as 6 months before a town meeting. So we don't have to wait for that time period. So in the case of a citizen's petition, we can hold a public hearing right away if we need to, even before the public hearing is held for other zoning bylaw amendments. That's something you and I talked about. Maybe that's a way to kind of help avoid what happened this last time from happening again, is getting that information to the bylaw subcommittee right away, and having that referring it back to the planning board and having that public hearing right away, and not waiting until the 2 meetings before town meeting. So but again, it can come in, so it's tough to really plan for citizens petitions, because we don't know when they're coming in or if they're coming in, so we kind of have to adjust.
And so I think, do you have, no, go ahead. I was gonna say, so I think, John, you and I had talked a little bit kind of at looking at kind of optimal timeline in opening, especially like the annual town meeting and the fall special town meeting, because those are the two that kind of consistently happen year after year after year. And I think in our bylaws, it's mandated as to when they happen. And so kind of looking back, if planning board ideally would have at least 2 meetings, which would be a month, we'll say 4
Yes.
weeks before the meeting, the
Right.
town meeting. Then ideally maybe opening and like having the warrant close maybe 6 weeks
That
before.
would be perfect.
Um,
If that could happen, then
and
that
that
would
would
give plenty of
provide
time. Yeah.
Some time for legal review, back and
Yes.
forth, if anything. Obviously for citizens petitions, I think we as a board and as staff can, and hopefully as as planning board, bylaw subcommittee, can just be a little bit more amenable to working together and trying to ensure that process is followed, the transmission back and forth. I think this past time, I just kind of was under the assumption, since it was a lot of staff conversation, that it kind of happened and maybe it didn't formally happen. And so I wanna just make sure that we are documenting that formal process.
Right.
As well, for us as well as for you. And if I understand, the bylaw, the planning board zoning bylaw subcommittee is made up entirely of planning board members? Are
No.
there any ad hoc members or anything right now?
There's openings,
Okay,
but at this time, the one person that we had resigned, so we've got openings, but nobody volunteering to join the committee.
That's been open for about a year, because I think that person resigned right after I started
What's that?
in October of 2023.
Yeah.
So that
Yep.
that opening has been there for
There's
over
more
a
than
year.
one opening, there's a couple openings actually.
is the planning board, because planning board is kind of manages the zoning bylaw subcommittee, are you amenable to kind of the office putting out on the town the town of Rutland social media?
Mika has already,
Okay,
Yeah.
she's done
To
it multiple
continue.
times.
And for the associate planning board member that was recently approved, and we've gotten no responses on that either.
Not at all. Yeah.
I was just wondering if thinking, and this is a little bit of out loud thinking, oftentimes we will co-post as a Board of Public Works and Select Board, because oftentimes there's business that falls under both now because of our bylaw. It stipulates that we are by default the same, so, but I don't know if it makes sense, especially kind of coming into potential warrant seasons, if it makes sense, or if the planning board would be amenable to kind of continuing, like considering to co-post, so if there's needed business that could happen at a planning board meeting, at least to get it started.
That's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Since it's the same membership and the planning board meets more often than the bylaw subcommittee does, and that would actually allow us to act on and discuss zoning bylaw amendments at planning board meetings as well. So that's actually something I hadn't thought of, which is maybe a simple idea to help things.
I mean, it's something to consider, I don't wanna, but I was just trying to think of some of the process of, and at least maybe it's not decisions are made at those meetings, but at least there can be conversation.
That's a good idea.
Cause some of our meetings go 2 and 3 hours and there's just no time to do multiple meetings
Yeah.
inside of that, so I'd hate to have 2 boards tied up for 6 hours.
Does select board have any questions, kind of, I appreciate the flow chart, thank you. And maybe if we can make sure that this is posted online also, just for,
Yeah, I can
Any-
definitely put it on the
as well as for
online
citizen.
page, the planning board's page, get it
Yeah.
up there.
Does anybody have any questions kind of about the zoning bylaw amendment process?
I have a couple.
Sure.
As far as, and I think I had mentioned this to you before, John, whoever can submit a amendment request or a new bylaw, is it just going to the office and making, like, is there a formal way, like, if I may, John, with your citizens petition, for example, was that just the method that you decided to go with versus approaching the town to say, would you be amenable to considering a bylaw? Like, what was your thought process for citizens petition versus?
It's a great question. I pretty much just read the bylaws of the town and then realized that I had a place inside one of the zones, and I kind of just came in and said, I'm interested in doing this, like, what would I do?
Okay,
And then my buddy told me that he did a petition for his place, so that's basically just what I did. I didn't really know the process when I started, to be honest. Kind of
Okay.
been learning as I'm going, you know?
yeah, and I think that's, again, why I'm grateful we're having this conversation is, and one of the things I had mentioned to you, John, was is there some way, or again,
Cause it's hard to know what to do. Like,
Exactly,
how do you
like,
know what to do?
I think this will help if we can do this, but if, and you know, I think some of the concern also is, like you said, John, we can't modify citizen petition
Right.
language, so if there was, if it was marketed more, if you have ideas or you're looking to have an amendment, come talk to town planner, have a discussion, see if it's something that the bylaw committee would consider. Cause that way you can go through the legal review process, you can go through the discussion with the bylaw subcommittee, is it a good idea or not? but I
Cause
don't
in
know
this
if-
case, I know with your citizens petition, there was an unintended loophole, there was an
Right.
unintended consequence to what you were proposing, which the select board caught and consulted with town council to help kind of clear that up. And obviously, you would have no way of knowing that.
Yeah.
That, you know, how the formula is and how these things are calculated, but again, town council and the town would know this, and that's a great idea, because that would allow me to potentially consult with town council and the planning
Yeah.
board to say, hey, this person came in with this idea for a zoning bylaw amendment, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then we could get that fleshed out and, you know, be able to present it in a way,
Right,
you know, where instead of having to create a new article, we can work with that article
exactly,
and get it fine tuned.
yeah. And so whether that's, you know, an online application form.
Austin and I have talked about that.
Like that, or just contacting you, again, just something.
Yeah.
To consider, cause I know that legal review was also a concern. And that was one of the other questions I had, is at what point in the process does it go to town council for review? Is it after?
Now,
It can be any of the above.
it could be in the above. Now, I know town council reviews the overall warrant
Yep,
before it gets finalized, but certainly we consult with town council before then when
For
we're working
questions and
on
everything.
bylaws as well. And that's the other thing, by consulting myself and the planning board ahead of time that will do, we can also kind of take a look at something
right,
and give some guidance as far as, okay, if you do this, this is how it's going to affect other parts of our bylaw or the unintended consequence.
okay. And then the hearings for them, I think this was, Leah kind of touched on this already, is that for the general amendment, again, it, not necessarily the final review by, after it's been put on the warrant?
Well, we have to have a public hearing no matter what, and the thing is, if we have a public hearing early, like we're doing this for the accessory dwelling units because there's a deadline of February 2nd. We're opening up a public hearing next week with the bylaw subcommittee, and we're keeping it open until town meeting, cause you can do it up to 6 months, like I said, so we're doing that in order to kind of stop the clock and give us a chance to work on a bylaw that works for everybody and bring it to the spring town meeting. So we can open up public hearings, like I said, 3-4 months in advance and keep it open and continue working on that bylaw.
Do you see any concern with having articles placed on the warrant prior to having hearings, or do you think that
No.
that process is
No, because I know
covered?
there have been instances where planning boards have had to hold public hearings on zoning bylaw amendments up until the night of town meeting or the night before town meeting. It's not ideal,
Right,
but it has happened. You know, I'm not a big fan of placeholder articles
yeah,
because I've seen those, you know, people say, well, if something's not ready, like road acceptances, we can always pull it, but that doesn't always happen.
right,
And sometimes stuff gets approved when it's not finalized and it's not ready for approval, so I'm not a big fan of placeholders, but certainly, we can hold the public hearing, and as long as we keep it open, you know, we can keep it open right up to town meeting if
to
we
the
have
town
to.
meeting day, okay. If I'm sitting in a meeting to place warrant articles and we have amendments, what are the things that you would like to have checked off to make sure? Is it just that it's gone through the bylaw committee, that it's had its review?
You guys, when you say amendments, do you mean amendments to like a zoning bylaw?
Anything that we're talking about, new zoning bylaws, amendments,
That would have to come back to the planning board, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
You guys can, how do I say this? Trying to, if you're placing an article that the planning board is going through the hearing, sent back to you, we've most likely done legal review for you guys to put it on. Now, you can have legal review too, and if legal changes that, I understand that, but if you have an open session and people wanna make amendments, I'd have to ask, or maybe Roger could answer that. Is that legitimate? Cause I would think it'd have to come back to the planning board, cause it's a change of that approved
Yeah, that's-
bylaw,
like
zoning
for-
bylaw that is.
yeah, for Article 10 on the last one, if I had been in my mind saying, has this been through and reviewed by the planning board's bylaw subcommittee? And the answer was no, then I could have said, well, maybe we need to table this, obviously we can't discuss it. That's what I'm kinda,
Yes.
what's my
Yeah.
checklist of
Yeah.
what do I need to make sure happens for the next
That
time?
outline is a
That's-
great checklist
okay.
to run through.
Okay.
And the only other thing I wanted to say, and Norm, I guess I'll through you for the planning board and then for the bylaw subcommittee. It's best if a lot of this stuff comes as emails.
Paper trails.
I just gotta do that. I know John's a big fan of having emails back and forth to him, and I would say the same thing. He's the chairman of the planning board and I'm chairman of the bylaw subcommittee, so either one of us can get emails and respond relatively quick. And John's our point guy. I've always said, we're a pyramid. He's the top and we go down the pyramid to us.
It's a pyramid scheme?
Pyramid scheme, yeah. Not for money, for execution. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I know.
Harry, do you have any questions on
No, I'm
the,
good.
kind of on the process of?
No, I think these are good, some good suggestions, actually simple solutions that can make the process better.
And I just would, I mean, for this piece especially, I would love to continue kind of the open dialogue and just, I think that over the past few years, we've had more and more citizens petitions come in that are zoning related. And I don't know if that's gonna change or not, so a little bit to Jen's point as to how can we kind of communicate to potentially interested citizens that there could be a different process, I mean, they're always open to do the citizens petition. But if they are interested in amenable to working with the planning board, the zoning bylaw subcommittee and everything, have legal review and everything, then that's definitely an option, but how to better communicate that, I guess,
Well, there's a risk to citizens petitions that we've outlined, and I know when I was in Rentham, there was a citizens petition where a year and a half prior, the town had just approved regulations on drive-through facilities with minimum lot size, queuing distance, bypass lanes, all that stuff, and then this individual developer came in with a citizens petition at the last minute to slash all those things in half. And it went down like the Hindenburg, because they're like, why would we go against what we just passed a year and a half ago? So there are times when someone may use it as a way to kind of bypass the system, thinking that they're actually going to get it through, but it ultimately ends up not being successful because, again, the planning board said, no, we're not gonna do this. So it's always best if someone can come to my office and to the planning board to consult, because we can actually offer guidance and help, tweak the bylaw to make it more effective and give it a better chance of succeeding if it's something that the town is supportive of.
Absolutely.
go ahead, Tim.
This is something I found when I just was searching the last couple days. I think it'd be good in Austin, Leah, yours, and Norm and John's hands. It's a guide for citizens petitions and warrant articles from Natick. Phenomenal document read. I know it's 50 pages,
Oh, God.
and the finance committee, their finance committee was involved in it, but there's sections of it that
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to borrowing without the intent to return, good sections,
Yeah.
so. This is something that Rutland could definitely borrow and use.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be to what we talked about earlier with the outline, this could be a good, I don't wanna say process, but tool for a citizen when they come in to understand what they need to do.
Wish there was a roadmap for sure.
I know.
Would've been probably way easier.
Yeah, it's just,
Hey, but your bylaw outlined some things that we need to improve, so
We work together.
Yeah.
so that's something it's, again, theirs is from 2017, it's 8 years old, but, and there could have been changes MGL, but it's a good start.
Yeah.
So I'll get that out to all three of
that'd
you.
be great.
Four of you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'll let John put it out to the planning board, cause Keith, if I do that, I could be a open meeting.
Yeah,
bylaw.
through me.
Yeah, I'm going through John for everything.
Sure.
So I think, I appreciate the kind of the dialogue about for helping us understand the process, and again, I think that the situation in the fall was just kind of a weird piece all around, but also kind of looking at how things have been happening the past few years and how they could potentially continue to happen. I would like to, I appreciate the
Absolutely.
dialogue and understanding your process and what timing wise and everything helps us also.
I'd like there to be a little bit more trust in the government, in my office, to come in that we're not adversarial. We'd like to work with you to make sure that whatever you're proposing works within our zoning bylaws and doesn't create any roadblocks.
And if I may, that's exactly the reason why I wanted to have this discussion, because I was not aware of this, so I couldn't ask
Yeah.
myself those questions. So now that I know and we have all this in the future, and again, on live for who knows what this board will look like in another year and a half,
Right.
year and a half, so for anybody new that is looking for the process, that would be, yeah. So I very much appreciate you coming in to go through and answer the questions.
If we're comfortable with that piece, then I believe planning board has asked, and this is, I think, just to kind of open conversation, we're not having any decision, are we amenable to taking, since Roger's on right now, are we amenable to talking about the special town meeting article request and date? Is that okay?
I have one question. Is this, the documents I got, either from you or Austin, I forget, Leah, said it was a select board sponsored, so this is not a citizen's petition? It is a sponsored,
No, it can't, because the citizens petition that John submitted for the last town meeting, the signatures he got were only for that town meeting. He would have to start the process all over again and
That's
get
what I
new
wanted to find
signatures,
out.
so
So
it
this
doesn't
is-
make a lot of sense to do that.
okay, so this is a sponsored,
Yes,
not citizen's petition, okay,
Yes.
good. That plays into timetables and all that stuff, so that's the reason why I wanted to know that, thanks.
So I believe, at our last meeting, the board, select board unanimously voted to, in agreement to call a special town meeting to, relook at the combination of 10 and 11. And I know there's been some conversation with KP and recent guidance from, the AG's office surrounding the marijuana bylaws and everything. So, I believe we can have that conversation. I wanna make sure the timing for planning board works as well.
we have a public hearing scheduled to open next Tuesday. So we're all set, we're gonna have our public hearing opened. I know that there was an email that town council sent out last week, giving different options as far as the wording. So I know, I kept with Roger's consultation, I kept the public hearing notice very general, because I know there may be some massaging a little bit.
I saw the timetable. Again, this is me, I'm not speaking for the entire planning board. I think we're trying to push this thing through too fast. I would rather have if we're gonna have a special town meeting later in February, I get we need to do it, I understand that, but either, cause it's just, if the end of January is up to date, we're 24 days from that, I think it's too quick. I mean, I feel like I'm being backed into a corner like I was the last time around, so I would rather push this into February, or ideally, my thought process was, if this isn't a do or die situation, why not put it on the spring town meeting that's less than 90 days away? So that's my thoughts, I'll let the rest of the board speak.
That's 90 days away.
It seems to me, okay, you're scheduling the town meeting, or you wanna schedule it for January 13th?
Oh, no, 30th was the first date, 30th.
Oh, okay.
13th's next Monday.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because if we're gonna have a public hearing, we're not meeting till the 14th, we got a problem.
And I think, if I may, I think that there's been some challenges with the original proposed date of January 30th. That was the original proposed date. And the board, I believe, was very much amenable to holding a special town meeting, but doing so in the Blair Room here, so that there wasn't any potential additional expense with the schools and having to worry about a significant cable setup over there. There's cable setup involved here, but at least the equipment is here. But the Blair Room is not available on the 30th. There was a miscommunication about the availability of that room. So I believe Austin and Tamika have worked with Carrie to find some other dates that the room is open, and I believe February 6th, it's the following Thursday, is available, as well as the 13th. And I believe the moderator and clerk's office and Roger are available for either of those dates, I believe.
not for the 13th,
Oh,
for the
okay.
6th.
Okay, so sorry, thank you.
Okay.
I know there's been some back and forth, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so for the sixth, so I think I know on the sixth, generally, that would be an RDIC meeting night, that they're trying to do. I don't know if RDIC would be amenable to either, I know sometimes they meet at 5, sometimes they meet at 6. I believe the clerk's office had asked if the meeting is on the 6th, that it's later, like a 6:30 or 7 o'clock start, because they have a conference, that day. So,
And Leah, I did send out an email to the RDIC today, just to make them aware that that date was gonna be in discussion for tonight.
Now, if I could just address, Tim, your concerns. With the date of February 6th, the planning board has 2 meetings between now and then, on the 14th and the 28th. So to Tim's concerns, I think considering the fact that pretty much we're gonna try and stay as close to the language from Article 10 as possible, I think the planning board has enough time to review, because that gives us about a month and 2 meetings. So I think that's enough time, considering the scope and considering the fact we basically know 99% of what the language is gonna be. It's not a new bylaw, so and we could have these be joint planning board and bylaw subcommittee meetings, especially the one on the 28th.
Has that been decided though? Cause I had 3 options in front of me
Right.
when I got that email.
Yes,
So I don't, that's, I get it, Article 10, or I'm
That's why
sorry.
you're here tonight.
Yeah, that's what I thought, so that's
Yeah.
why.
So-
I don't wanna commit to anything until we come up with.
Well, regardless, the 3 options are to amend the marijuana bylaw, right? So the purpose of tonight and the purpose of your public hearing will be to discuss the language of the article that you mutually decide tonight. That's why we felt it was important to have both boards in this room, so there was mutual agreement about what should be that warrant article.
okay, yeah, so let's talk about that.
so, we can look at the warrant article first, conversation, or should we, is it better for the board to call the meeting? I
feel like I'd like to discuss the article first and then
Yeah,
decide.
That's kind
because
of where I
that's
was
a big
going.
question mark, is what's the
Yeah.
language going to
That's
be?
kind of where I was
Probably
going.
need more time,
Yep.
yeah.
Because Austin and I have discussed it, and I definitely have my professional preferences as far as what options.
But I would just, if Roger could maybe just give a brief overview of the 3 options. I tried to kind of summarize our conversation, Roger, to both boards, but if you'd be able to quickly summarize what you presented to me and the 3 options that we have here. Just so you know, both boards have a copy of the email that you sent me and then the draft language of the 3 articles as well.
Thanks, Austin, and with your permission, Madam Chair.
Sure, Roger.
Okay, good evening, members of both boards, as well as viewing members of the public. So since the town meeting in November, our cannabis team has been in discussions with the Attorney General's Municipal Law Unit on similar bylaw issues for some other communities, and the Municipal Law Unit had raised the possibility that a amendment to a retail LME bylaw that fixed the number of retail LMEs to a specific number might receive a caution, not a disallowance, but a caution, given that it's possible in the future that that number could fall below the 20% threshold set by General Laws Chapter 94G, Section 3. Just for everyone's benefit, the statute requires that if a town is going to adopt a bylaw that has a retail LME limit below the 20% of the off-premises liquor licenses issued in the town, there needs to be a ballot vote to approve that bylaw, not just a town meeting vote. So given that information that we had received from the AG's office, we put together, for the select board's benefit and the benefit of the planning board indirectly as well. So two other options in addition to the language that was in Article 10 at the November town meeting. And I'll pause here just to note that for all three of the options before you, there is an additional amendment component that is a clerical amendment to section 89B. We noticed in our review this time around that 89B still had a old reference, cross-reference to section 88C that should now be 89C. So that's what section 1 of each of the three options is. Section 2 of each of the options are the actual amendment with respect to the retail LME provision. So as I said, option 1 is as currently drafted. That is, the same text as Article 10 of the November warrant. Article 2 is a version that would permanently change the bylaw to set the number of retail LME special permits to 2, but contains a provision that if that were to fall below the 20%, it stays at 2, and that would require a town election ballot vote. And then option 3 is including a provision that if the number of liquor licenses, off-premises liquor licenses increases to the point that 2 falls below the 20% threshold, then the limit will automatically bump up to the next lowest whole number that is equal to or more than 20%. So for Rutland, the current quota under Chapter 138 is 8 such liquor licenses. 4 are currently issued. So in order for 2 to become less than 20%, the quota would have to increase by 3 to 11, and all 11 would have to be issued. But this third option provides a mechanism where if that were to at some point in the future happen, then the 2 retail LME special permits provided by the bylaw would automatically bump up to 3 to keep the town at or above the 20%.
Just because the town has the LME allocation numbers, it still has to follow all of the appropriate zoning and permitting and everything, correct? If it's designated to be in specific zoned areas and there's not space in those areas, it's not like a guarantee that those licenses are definitely issued if there's not an appropriate site.
For instance, John's development is successful, he would have to receive a special permit from the planning board. So it would require an application and a public hearing process for his project, specific project, and a site plan and all that stuff, so.
Is that correct, Rod? I just wanna make sure that the public understands that even if the number of licenses were to increase, it's not a guarantee that there's going to suddenly be 3 or 4 or 5 retail marijuana shops because the town may not have the space zoned for that.
Right. All the other applicable zoning restrictions for retail cannabis would still be in place. This would simply increase the number of special permits that the planning board can issue if all the other requirements are satisfied. Up to, right now it would be 2, and then depending which of these options the select board decides to proceed with, if any, for example, if it were to proceed with the third option, then it might, go from 2 to 3 at some point in the future if that were necessary to keep pace with the 20% of off-premises liquor licenses issued by the town, should that number increase.
Tim?
Roger, quick question. So right now, and somebody can help me, our liquor licenses are 4 or 5 right now, is that correct?
4.
4. So to follow the state you wanna call it the Cannabis Commission, state law, 20% of that is one. So with this bylaw, we're basically overriding the minimum by the state, upping it to the next one, but still keeping the 20% in there for future. So that's the struggle I'm having with now is I've got this 20% in there, which is the state minimum. And we've already met that, but we're exceeding it with this bylaw. Yeah, we're making contingencies to potentially fix that 20% in the future. That's my sort of, you wanna call it, struggle. I guess that's a good word for it right now. Cause with 4, if we got into trouble, like Roger said, 11's our number. That's 7 liquor licenses away. That's a lot of growth in 5, 10 years, maybe even 20 years, I don't know. I think this town's been pretty much steady with 4 liquor licenses for a long time, as far as I can remember. So I'm struggling with this, so that's my only point I wanted to bring up is 20% gives us 1. If we wanna go to 2, we've overridden the state and added 1 to it, we're still keeping the 20% in the bylaw for as far as I'm concerned, way future. So that's why I'm struggling with leaving that percentage in there and let's put a hard number. We can change it at town meeting anytime we want, we have 2 a year. So that's why I guess I'm going back to the original one seems like the best choice as opposed to getting into the future ones. But again, I understand all the effort that they've done with the municipal legal unit, so, or law unit, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Roger, to clarify for option 2, where it requires the ballot question, is that the ballot question to allow the zoning amendment to be in effect, or only when that 20%, if the limit falls below 2? Like, at what point is the ballot question required?
So the ballot question would be required as soon as the bylaw is adopted. But if, for example, the ballot question were to fail and the motion had not made the passage of the article contingent upon the ballot question, the bylaw would still be amended. There would just be a question of whether the limit of 2 could be enforced down the road if it became less than the 20% threshold. Without a ballot vote approving the bylaw, you couldn't enforce that part of it. Now, it's not to say that if the ballot vote was done, right after this passed in the form of option 2 and failed, you could bring it back at a future ballot and try again. So I'll just put that out there.
Jen, to follow up to yours, so the default is 20% there all the time, which right now for us is 1. And then if we approve this to 2 and it went to ballot and the ballot said no, we'd always have the 1, we just wouldn't have the 2. Is that correct, Roger?
Not if the motion on the article didn't make the amendment contingent, the amendment would take effect. It just wouldn't be enforceable down the road if the 2 became less than the 20%.
And I think if the consensus, from the board at the time, last meeting, was to not, we were amenable to a special town meeting because the expense was much less than if we were to have to go to ballot, because there's a significant cost with ballot elections. And so I don't wanna, I wanna do what's best for town, but I think that the option 2 definitely comes with a increased expense to town, and I just wanna put that out there for everybody's knowledge. Because that's that consideration.
So do we have to do a ballot?
So,
No, or no?
so, through the chair?
Yeah.
Roger, so if we vote for Article 2, that is setting the limit at Article 1, but option 2, that is setting the limit at 2, which then has to go to town ballot. Is that correct?
If you,
And if
That's correct.
And if it doesn't pass, then it still opens it up to more than two.
Correct. The limit. My apologies, go ahead.
It's so that if it doesn't pass the ballot, then we're not limited to two, and it could be 3, 4, 5, whatever it is down the road then, as time goes on,
Well, you can only have 20%.
depending on the number of licenses that we have.
If you proceeded with option 2 and there were no ballot vote to approve the part that limits it at 2, even if 2 is below 20%, then once 2 fell below 20%, in our opinion, it would no longer, that part of the bylaw would no longer be enforceable. So if there were 2 and you hit 11 liquor license, off-premises liquor licenses issued, and a third applicant for a retail LME special permit came in and came before the planning board would not be able to rely upon the bylaw limiting at 2 to deny that special permit.
That would limit it to 2 without going to ballot. Is there such a one?
Option 1, I think.
1 or 3, I believe.
That's
Three-
still
three-
percentage based.
I
No,
believe-
because 3 has the provision that would, if we get to 11 liquor licenses, it would automatically go to the next round number, which is 3. So 1 or 3 would not require it to go to ballot.
Right, but
Right.
I think Harry's asking which of the options without going to ballot, so taking option 2 out.
Yeah.
Would limit it to only 2, and I believe that that's option 1.
Option 1, yeah.
But I think the consideration with option 1, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the AG's office has started issuing warnings with the language around a hard limit that's numerical limit that's not tied to a percentage. Is that correct?
careless.
It has indicated that that is a possibility to issue that type of caution. And in that case, Madam Chair, members of the board, if Article 1's, if the option 1 approach were taken and were approved by town meeting, and that would set the limit at 2, but if 2 ever fell below the 20%, then the bylaw would need to be revised or it could not be enforced. So it would need to be revised to reflect that, to go up to 2, to go up to either 3, or down the road, say we're gonna amend the bylaw further to provide that it's going to be 2, and then you'd have to do the ballot vote. But that would be down the road as opposed to doing the ballot vote now.
Now, I have been part of a bylaw when I was in the town of Rochester where we implemented a ground-mounted solar bylaw and they were by, I believe it was site plan review. And they approved the bylaw, the AG's office did, with that type of warning. To be honest with you, in my opinion, the bylaw passes, they can give a warning if they want to, but that's what the town wanted, so.
Excuse me if I may, it sounds like essentially 1 and 3 would get us to the same place. It's just, do we limit it to 2 now and revise later as we need to? Or do we just get to the end point now where it just automatically will update and we don't have to go through that process of revising the bylaw again?
But the question is, will the town of Rutland ever get to 11 liquor licenses?
Exactly.
And will the market ever bear more than 2 licensed marijuana facilities in Rutland?
Right, well, and that's a little bit what I was asking also, was even if the consensus was to go with Article 3 or the option 3, it doesn't necessarily mean that even if we hit that magic number, that we would have a third option. There's still all the special permitting, site plan approval and everything that would need to go through that may or may not.
No, but I think what Roger's saying is that the bylaw would have, if we reach 11, we would have to change the bylaw to bring it up to three
For number
active.
Exactly,
one, yes.
exactly, but just
Yeah.
because we have the third doesn't mean that we're gonna shoehorn it in somewhere where it doesn't fit,
Right.
right? That there's still provisions,
It could sit out there for however long and just not be used.
right?
Just because it's there doesn't mean it
Right,
has
if
to
the
be
market,
issued.
if the market can't bear more than one or two, or there's not adequate site. I think that Article 3 provides that little bit more foresight, but I can also appreciate, just that if we were ever to get there, it's not necessarily something that we have to constantly be worrying about, but also if we all make a commitment to kind of review our zoning bylaws periodically, all of our bylaws as we had been, not so good at doing, but tried to start again, then maybe, that's the option for option 1, which was what was
And
originally.
I'm just wondering, after what happened at the special town meeting with option 1, basically, if you add that provision in there, option 3, does that make it even more difficult to get this passed at the special town meeting? Cause now you open up another potential small can of worms.
And
John, you made a comment about that even though it doesn't fit the parameters, even though we can do another one, new MLE, it doesn't fit the parameters, but we can issue a special permit to make it fit. I'm not hearing that the town likes that as an idea.
Well, no, they're gonna need a special permit no matter what. It's not an either or.
Right.
Even if this passes at special town meeting coming up, whatever language it is, the applicant still needs to go through a special permit. They're two different processes.
No, but does the board have to issue a special permit?
Yes.
They
It
meet all
does.
the
Yes.
requirements.
no, we can deny a special
Oh,
permit.
no, yeah, they can deny a special permit, but a special permit has to be sought.
Correct.
Right, but I'm just saying, cause it sounded like that if somebody did seek it, we had to automatically issue a
No,
special
no,
permit.
but there has to be good reasons to deny that special permit. The planning board can't deny it on
That's
a
a
whim.
concern that I have. Okay.
So am I hearing kind of, Roger, thank you for the clarifications on everything. Am I hearing kind of consensus from select board as well as planning board that the option 1, essentially what we had gone with at the fall town?
Article 10, yeah, the language from Article 10,
Which is
yeah.
what we had gone with at the fall town meeting, is the option that is most favorable in both boards' eyes. That's setting the number at 2.
In mine, if the only way you're gonna make your February 6th or 13th date is, in my opinion, is option 1. Any other option, you open the hearings up in the bylaw or planning board and you don't know what you're gonna get. You're still gonna open the hearing up, don't get me wrong, for
Right.
option 1, but we've sort of had, and I don't wanna walk into my next phases, but the town wasn't too adamant happily with Article 10 and 11, so I'm not sure what we're gonna get at the hearing section of this, so
Right.
I'm giving everybody a heads up.
The town wasn't?
No, because it obviously didn't pass.
It didn't pass.
But I think the purpose is to make this situation whole.
Right,
And in my professional opinion, the best option to make the situation whole is to go with the same language that was in Article 10 and bring it back to this town meeting for transparency as well.
Right. And have the conversation, because I think it failed overall, it failed by the 2/3, it needed, any of these articles, because they're zoning amendments, require 2/3 majority. It failed, I think, by 2 or 3 votes to hit that 2/3, so the majority voted in favor, but not the 2/3. And there was no conversation, planning board didn't speak to it, select board didn't speak to it, FinCom didn't speak to it. Obviously, there were 3 favorable recommendations on it, but beyond that, there was no conversation regarding it. So I think that in an attempt to address the not being able to vote on the citizens petition as well as continue the conversation is the rationale for this. So am I hearing consensus on option 1, which is the language setting it at 2 and leaving it at that? It does not require a ballot vote, just to.
Lee, I just had, Roger, this is for Roger, is there any insight that the AG would shoot this down? Or is it just gonna be simply a warning and that's it? Caution, so to speak, I'm sorry.
We have not heard anything that the municipal law unit would disapprove an amendment in this form.
Perfect.
So the most we've heard is that there could be a caution. It's not to say that it couldn't happen. Of course, the MLU can make changes and do what it's going to do, but we have not heard anything that an amendment in this form would be disapproved.
I'll go with those percentages.
And that's another risk of thinking too far in advance, is the situation may not be the same in 5 or 10 years.
I just have a comment. It's just, I'd be okay with allowing more than 2. That may, depending on what everyone else thinks, I'm just one person. Limiting to 2 just says that we're just here for someone right now. I mean, it sort of doesn't let anyone else play in town with these type of businesses. You've got liquor licenses, you can issue up to 8. No one seems to have a problem with 8, possibly, but to just say, oh, there can only be 2, it kind of just says, it's just to help out, or just to work with one applicant at the moment. I mean, it should sort of stay anonymous, it should be for anyone who wants to apply. So possibly,
Well, it'd still be anonymous, everybody would be able to
yeah,
apply.
well,
There's
yeah,
already one issued, so just open up another license, so everybody would have to go through the same process.
yeah. Well,
I
if you,
think-
once we hit 2, you can't issue anymore, is that what
Right,
I'm
I'd like to keep
getting
that
to?
simple.
But I think also even I don't disagree with you,
No,
because I
yeah,
hear
yeah.
what you're saying. I think just because there's I think any of these options is only going to give us one more at this time.
Right.
Right now, that's the only option. And then it's just whether or not there's an additional one down the road, or potentially down the road, planning board, zoning bylaw select board needs to look at amending the language because the population numbers have increased.
Yeah.
I think just because if one of these options were to pass, that gives us one more license, that just opens up the option for anyone to apply for that special permit. It's not a guarantee that it's it's not a guarantee that it's the petitioner, right? Like, I mean, that's based on the property and the zoning and everything, a valid option, but that's not a guarantee. And I
The
think
special permit may not be successful.
exactly, right,
Or
and
we might
so.
not get the CCC approval. I mean, there's a multitude of hoops that have to be jumped through before we even get to that point.
Right.
Right, so I hear what you're saying, Keith, in the sense of kind of like allowing more interested
Yeah.
businesses to do business in town, and I think that that's wholly valid. I think given the way the kind of the atmosphere in Rutland is, as well as the way the law is written, that any of these options are only gonna give us one additional potential option. And it's not even a guarantee that would be successful. I do think also that town needs to be mindful, some of the conversation I've heard is, can the town support more than one? And I caution a little bit, how much is it on the town to ensure to make that judgment if business feels that they can have very diversified business in the same community, right? Like, we look at, neighboring communities and there's 2 pharmacies of the same brand within a mile and a half of each other or something. So I think that there are, that fine line as far as what government should be doing versus what private business should be doing. And if we want to be able to have more business and more business revenue, the cannabis tax is 3%. And so that's kind of bang for the buck, could bring in more for town.
Is that do all of these leave an option open for more people? Is that what I'm seeing with
Not-
89B
Not
and 89C?
unless we increase our liquor licenses,
Okay.
but again, we comply with the state.
Yeah, we
Actually, by
already are.
adding this, we over double what the state requires, so we're actually more than what the state, we could keep this at 1 right now and still be in compliance with the state.
Yes,
Tim, and then I think Sherry had her hand up and
I've been thinking long and hard about this, and I'm balancing, I don't wanna use the word safety, but operational length versus revenue. And we've just had, excuse me, I'm wrong, High Hawk, is that the name?
Yes.
We've only had them in operation for less than a month. We haven't seen pluses, minuses, we haven't seen that yet, so I'm struggling right now with my move into 2, which I had to step back after that, cause unfortunately I live with the revenue young lady, and that's the first thing I thought about is 3%, it's gonna help our budget out, but I've stepped back more from a town perspective, how's that gonna affect the town? And I don't think we've had the opportunity to see that with High Hawk's operation
But I
in
think,
So
Rutland.
can I ask you this, Tim, how's this different than liquor stores?
It's my opinion, is what is the difference.
well, and I think there's consideration, again, we don't know for sure where this license would be. We know where the applicant is looking for, right? And there's the potential of a rehabilitation in a business zoned district that could potentially start additional economic development. And so I think there's a fine line as far as is it on town to say, we need to wait and see how successful this business is, like with the Common Vics for like Coffee Lands or Dunks or Dippin' Donuts, like.
Right, do you do this for any other business?
Mine's not about success. It's about, we'd never had this type of business in Rutland before. I really wanna see more for the planning board. You know, we have conditions that are put on special permits and such like that. Is there something we haven't learned that we need to learn? That's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying it's wrong, right, or indifferent. I just wanna have some learning time, because again, with a liquor store, I got learning time. We know parking, we know time frame. We know that. We just have no experience in this town with this type of business.
But I think,
Just like if for the first time, a gun store went to open up in Rutland, I'm sure there'd be questions in town, cause we don't have a retail gun facility. So, and I'm not comparing the two, I'm just saying,
This is
a type
different
of
though,
business.
cause you already have one, so it wouldn't be
We
the
haven't had
first time.
one, but for a month, that's it. And it's only been open for a month.
But it's been in process for 3 or 4 years.
No, it has not.
but
How
I
long has the
think,
process been?
The
I
process is not operational.
but I think a little bit of this, and I hear your concerns, Tim, but I think a little bit of this is, again, if we want to try to bring in economic development, then why, and again, it's not to say that this is definitely going to be fulfilled, right? There's still a special permit process, there's still site plan, there's still a whole lot of things that need to go into it. But I guess for a potential economic development piece that we could realize, the town could realize a significant percent return compared to even our meals tax, I believe is 0.75% on our meals tax for restaurants, dine-in facilities. So I think there's
I get, Lee, I get the revenue part.
Yeah.
We just have so many towns around us that said no, and we said yes, and I'm fine with that.
Right.
It's just, now we're gonna double it. And we have no, I know it's been in planning for 3 or 4 years, but we have no, if you wanna call it operational, we don't have,
So-
customers coming in. We don't know what our town services are gonna be required
So-
at that facility.
And I hear your concern, but the board has already voted to call a special town meeting to discuss for one of these options. And so I think that's that.
Yeah, but if the zoning bylaw's not finished by the planning board or the bylaw subcommittee, you can have a special town meeting without anything from the boards? I mean, we're getting into, you put the cart before the horse again. Again, you backed us into a corner. That's my opinion. I'm not speaking for the entire board. I feel like I've been backed into a corner.
This has been
with Jan-
communicated, I believe this has been communicated ongoing since before the end of the year.
Exactly, and how many days of that end of the year was anybody there? You guys were off the middle of Tuesday, you don't work on Fridays. I don't wanna hear we had 2 full weeks to look at this. I'm sorry. How many select board meetings were in between when this was communicated and now? You had the one saying it was gonna happen and that was it, if I'm not mistaken.
Through the chair.
Austin,
With all due respect, didn't the planning board unanimously recommend this article for the special town meeting? already?
Yeah, and let's talk about that if we wanna get into that.
So let's talk about the unanimous recommendation
And when was it done?
for the special town meeting that just occurred. And the argument for holding the special town meeting is that there wasn't sufficient, I think in the eyes of the citizens petition and the select board, obviously by calling this, was that a lot of people left that town meeting, and I think the applicant feels that they didn't get a fair shake for this zoning article.
Yeah, cause they never even got to vote on my petition. Technically, the town has to vote on my petition, and we never did.
That's beyond the planning board's, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a legal
Nor was
issue.
there, and furthermore, nor was there any discussion on this article at all. The planning board didn't stand up, select board didn't stand up, nor was there any questions or comments from the public.
Wasn't
And we couldn't have, we couldn't have
We're gonna
movement
get
on
into this.
the citizens petition because there wasn't a public hearing held, a legally required public hearing on Article 11, which was the submitted citizens petition. So we're trying to make that as a whole option. I have Harry and then Sherry.
Tim, I hear what you're saying. However, I do believe the planning board made a decision, whether it was unanimous or not, to move this one forward. However, I agree with you that we do not have any information on this particular facility. So I am looking at, we wanna do 2, but I'm not looking at doing 3 or 4 or even having the option for that down the road. Cause we know liquor stores, we know auto stores, we know grocery stores. This is new. We have no idea how this is gonna play out in this town. And I'm hearing from a lot of people in town, they're not sure how this is gonna play out. I've been there. I stopped in. I didn't buy anything, but I stopped in there.
It's confidential, Harry, you don't have to tell anyone.
I stopped in there because I wanted to see how the process, how things worked. How did it come, how safe was it in terms of where did this stuff come from? So I understand that. But I'm not saying that, I'm willing to just open it up to 3, 4, or 5 more. If we get liquor licenses, we're definitely at 311.
Okay.
We didn't think the town in this short a time was gonna grow to 10,000 either. So there's an uncertainty there that I'm not willing to accept, that we're going to put a 3rd one in. I understand that you have that special permit available. But for now, without any type of information, data whatsoever on this one, I guess number 1 would limit it to 2. And that's all I'm saying.
Name and address.
Sherry Haber, 1 Olivia Lane. As not part of either of these boards, I may have missed some pieces. But from a public perspective, we walk into town meeting and people leave early all the time. And people, oftentimes, when we've had citizens petitions, no one has spoken to them. And oftentimes, there's been no discussion. And oftentimes, they've not passed and been passed over because they haven't been looked at. And I have to be honest with you, that putting forth a special meeting and bringing forth almost the same thing to a point where you're gonna have a small room in the library because nobody's gonna show up feels not very transparent.
So I can speak to the library. That's where we held the bylaw last year, the special bylaw town meeting, and that room can hold, I believe, 90 without having additional fire personnel. I think we can go up to 100 or 120 with fire personnel staged, maybe even 150, I'm not sure of the number, staged for adequate exits and fire suppression. So I think
It still doesn't feel right.
I
The
hear,
amount of people
I
here
hear-
or not. If you're bringing forth the same thing
I hear
a
that.
month and a half later, it just doesn't feel right. I don't understand why it couldn't wait until the regular meeting.
I hear the concern for sure, and I think that this board, at our last meeting, we had the conversation as to what the will of the board was, and it was that the board felt because Article 11 was essentially not, which was the actual citizens petition, was not able to be moved, that the board, the town owed to do something to the petitioner, I believe, is
I would
the-
disagree that the town owes any petitioner anything.
Technically, if you do a petition, you have to get a vote.
No.
What do you mean, no? If a citizen does a petition, the town has to vote on it. Is that not true?
It has to be put on
It has to be put on the warrant,
A
but it
resident
does not
doesn't
have to
actually
be
have
voted
to
on.
choose to vote for it, but the concern
brought
here is that
Yeah.
no, you couldn't vote on it, even if you
Right.
wanted to, because the public hearing was not held. So if 10 had voted down, if everything had gone through for 11, it could have been essentially a second chance, if you will, for you to stand up, to put forward your thoughts and your reasoning for why you were suggesting it, and that was not able to happen because we could take no action on that article, even though it was on the warrant. So that's my, I mean, if we don't get through the process correctly and allow the citizens that are bringing forth issues that they are looking for a fair vote on, that's why I was in agreement with bringing this forward, to make sure that there was the right opportunity to speak to it, to whatever the citizens petitioner felt needed to be said.
I don't think any of us is saying that it's gonna go through or not go through, that's not our choice, that's the town choice. But I also believe, like Jen said, that we're trying to bring in business, and the last thing we wanna do is try to treat a business unfairly through no fault of their own.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do. Not favoritism, nothing, it's gonna go to a town meeting, it's just a question of when, that's all. And that's why we were trying to be fair.
To respond to you then, in that point, I can see Keith's point of, if you did it in May, then it wouldn't look like you're doing it. I have nothing against you.
Oh, nope, I don't.
Or your petition, or I
don't think
would
it-
vote
I
or
don't
not
think-
vote.
I don't think any.
I'm just-
No, but they are doing it for this person, cause he brought forward a citizen's petition. He
Right.
came forward expressing interest to do this project.
Has anybody else?
Exactly.
Exactly,
Well,
but
that's the
nobody
thing.
else has.
But
so
if
it's
there were
like-
two licenses right now available and open, and people knew that they were going to be available and open, would they have come forward?
But this,
I don't know.
this is
People
how,
I'm
could
just
have
saying.
outside of
this is
town
how a lot of
anytime.
bylaws change in a lot of towns. Someone comes forward and has an idea for a project, presents it to the town, and then the town says, oh, okay. And in every town I've worked in, bylaws change because someone expresses an interest in doing something where nobody else has. So this is not unusual.
So I think if I can circle back, the board at our last meeting had voted in favor unanimously of calling a special town meeting. Oh, sorry, Michelle, I can't see your hand, sorry, thanks, Austin.
It's okay. Oh,
Name and address, please.
Michelle Van Reet, 230 Charnock Hill Road. So I think there's a couple of things here. I agree. I thought we did vote on it, no, at the town meeting, last town meeting,
Article 10,
Article 10.
not 11.
What, so what was the difference between the two? What was Article 11? Wasn't it just not?
That was the actual citizens petition that we could take no action on.
But the language was different,
Right.
because the language in Article 11 would have increased the percentage from 25% to 50%, which would eventually have opened up the town, if it met its full 8 liquor licenses, to potentially 4
Right.
of these
Right.
facilities. That's why the select board decided to draft the new article to limit that, so that, to Harry's point, so there couldn't be
Right.
more than 2.
So, right, but even if we took no action, that is action that we took on it, correct?
No, because
Not on the citizens petition.
not on the citizen petition.
But on Article 10.
But I agree with Sherry in terms of, I don't think it's right to have a special meeting just for this, a couple months before the town meeting. It costs money whether you're doing it at the library or at the school. And I totally do not agree with having a town meeting at the library. It's not safe there for the number of people that you could potentially get if hordes of people end up, which I don't think they would, but just in the off chance that they do, what's going to be the contingency if you do get a bunch of people to show up for it, and then dealing with it? I think it should be done at the schools. And there was a glitch with the recording last time, but we've done many town meetings and it hasn't been an issue in the past. So I would assume that we could fix that and have it smoothly running forward. But I think we should definitely be using the school buildings. They're town buildings and they're safer in terms of space-wise, accommodating all of the people that would want to go. I think that having a town meeting in the library is gonna potentially turn people off from going because they're gonna think that there's not enough room. And I don't think that that's a good way to run it, in my opinion. But obviously, you guys do whatever. But that's just my opinion in terms of doing any town meeting in the library.
I think we have two issues here, and the attorney has been gracious to be here, and he's here for whether we do whichever option we're going to do. So I'd like to take that option, push that through, and then talk about when our meeting is going to be after that, if that's okay with everybody.
I agree, Harry.
So as I was saying, the board had agreed to call a special town meeting for various reasons at our last meeting, and unfortunately, the public wasn't here for that. It was well advertised, but we're here right now, as Harry mentioned, our first order is to just determine the language of which we would be looking to move forward with. It sounds like the consensus is the first option, which is essentially the limiting it to 2, which is essentially what we had presented at the special town meeting in the fall. Would you like a motion? I would love a motion.
I move to choose option number 1 for the language of warrant article number 1 for the special town meeting as presented by town council.
And to refer to planning board.
For a public hearing.
For planning board, zoning bylaw subcommittee and planning board
No,
for.
just planning board,
just
public
planning
hearing.
board for public hearing.
I think we already referred it, and that's when they published the public hearing.
No, it
Just-
wasn't referred, no, I went ahead and scheduled the public hearing, but they still need to refer it.
And refer to planning board for public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Conversation on article or option 1. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Ledger, I.
Tom dropped, Whitman, aye. And that's referred to planning board. I believe you have your public hearing
Tuesday.
scheduled for Tuesday.
Yep.
So that's that. Thank you, Roger, for all of the feedback and back and forth, and everything. Now.
Thank you for making that decision, now I can get that to the packets before next week's meeting, that'd be great.
Thank you. I know we still need to set the date, and I know we also have some other business with planning board. So is the board amenable to taking our additional planning board, I'm kind of all over the place with the agenda and I apologize. Our additional business with the planning board now, since planning board is here, and then we can circle back to setting a date and everything. Is the board amenable to that?
Yes.
Okay. So I believe there's been some conversation surrounding some recent developments in planning board, and there's been talk of considering a moratorium on
No, let me clarify. There's been some discussion because of a project that's gonna be coming forward for a potential open space or conventional subdivision. It's raised the topic of roadway acceptances and subdivision roadway acceptances and the budgetary constraints of the town. And through this process, I found out through Roger that legally, the town is not obliged to accept any subdivision roadway, even if it's built to town standards. It's up to the discretion of the town. Therefore, as the planning board has discussed this, I decided to make this a discussion topic because I want to see if the select board would be interested in pursuing a potential moratorium on roadway acceptances, because the planning board, Norm made a comment at our last meeting that we can't be in the business of picking and choosing, we're gonna accept this subdivision's roadway, but we're not gonna accept this one. Obviously, current subdivisions that are already under construction would be exempt from this, but future subdivisions, I think it would be easier if the town wanted to entertain this, to have a policy or a moratorium, and obviously, I would have to work with Roger to draft the language, but I just wanted to put it out there to see if there was any interest in having a moratorium on roadway acceptances for a certain amount of time.
Chair. If this is accepted, what's the ramification of it to the builders, to the, APR issues? What's the,
What's APR?
well, isn't that the, I'm thinking of the lots that attach right to the street, but this is just.
A&R.
A&R.
No, that doesn't apply to
This is just subdivisions, right?
Yeah, just subdivisions where they're creating
Okay.
roadways. Well, the impact would be that these roadways would remain private. And potentially with homeowners associations, and the homeowners of those subdivisions would be responsible for the maintenance of the roadways.
So they can still build the roads, they can still
Absolutely.
finish the roads, they can do
Absolutely.
anything.
Wouldn't stop
Just that we're
development,
not allowed
just
to.
that the town would not be responsible for maintaining them.
Okay.
I have a question, is it, and this might be, Roger might need to interject on this also, I'm not sure. Could the town still require that they're built to town standards, so at some point, if a moratorium is lifted and they wanted to be put forward, they are,
Yes,
I mean, I assume
I
it,
believe so,
I
yes.
assume it would be that understanding that if they wanted at any point to put forward a road, it would have to meet town standards regardless of whether it was built during a moratorium or not. Is that,
Again, I'm just putting this out there. I
Yeah.
haven't looked into this at all. I've never dealt with one of these.
and I just
Just putting it out there as a discussion, so I can't answer most
I
of these questions, I
just
don't
wanted
know.
to put it on, John and I talked about putting it on our agenda tonight to have, because planning board would be here, but then also to just introduce it. It's not for decision, it's not for
Right.
anything, it's to kind of have questions and seek answers and feedback and everything. It's not by any means kind of a decision factor tonight.
No, just want to put it out there, don't even have to give me an answer tonight. But if that's something that the town is interested in potentially pursuing, then I could start working, with town council and the planning board and the select board on drafting a potential moratorium. I'd have to consult with town council to figure out the parameters, see if there's any case law or any precedent as far as time period, length of the moratorium, to see what would be legally acceptable, so I'd have to look into all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think given our kind of fiscal outlook and everything, also there's considerations as far as obviously with town accepted roadways, we get some chapter 90 money as long as the chapter 90 list is updated, but in the scheme of the work that is needed for most of the roadways, it's not.
Chapter 90 funding has dwindled over the years. It used to be a lot more, especially over the last 15, 20 years, it's gone way down. And with the cost of roadway repair, I mean, the average mile of full reconstruction of roadway cost $1 million or so. I mean, that's, you see towns even where I live in Rhode Island where towns are having to pick and choose the worst spots of a road and just do little patches of overlays just as Band-Aid solutions, so it is a consideration.
And I guess one of my other questions, and again, just kind of for consideration, is how that's communicated from a developer standpoint to any potential buyers, because I think historically, it hasn't been well communicated, and it's been, we've had residents show up in mass on roads that were clearly communicated from the get-go that they were never going to be accepted because they had deficiencies or whatever, and periodically we have residents in mass kind of show up to push to try to have those roads accepted, and there's that detriment to town, and just how to ensure that it's communicated, and that's not a town-specific requirement, but I think that it's something that town needs to be mindful of.
In the case of a subdivision, it's put as a condition of approval like Hilltop Estates. It's a condition of approval that the road should remain private in perpetuity. So that is the developer's responsibility to communicate that to any homeowners that come into the neighborhood. That's not necessarily the town's responsibility to communicate that to those potential homeowners, that's the developer's responsibility.
But I think also it needs to be well documented in planning board and select board documentation, so that when every 3 to 5 years there's a push to have these potentially not built to standard roads accepted, that it's clearly documented, that it's been known from
It should be a condition of approval.
Right, and again, if they're built to standard during a moratorium and then the moratorium is out of effect and they want to bring them forward, then they're built to standard and would go through the same process of the street acceptance. But
naturally, if that's, say, 7 years down the road and there's wear and tear on the road, they would have to, that road would have to be potentially repaired
up to standard.
for the town to accept it.
I know, Tim, you have your hand up.
It's okay, I'm waiting, I'm just,
Go ahead.
my biggest problem with that is private roads, does this town wanna get into the private road game? Because, remember, and I apologize, some people weren't here when Joe Buckley was here, but Joe said, even if it's a private road and there's a sewer or water failure in it, or the road has a problem, the state can force a safety issue where the town has to come in and fix it. Then they have to go back to the homeowners and try to recover that money. I don't think this town wants to be into the business of managing private roads. I mean, most towns have town roads. I understand there's budget issues, I get that, I do, I understand. But I don't think we wanna start walking down that path where in the past, this town has basically accepted roads, expected builders to build roads to town standards. I don't think we just wanna say, you know, if it's gonna be a private road, let it be a private road. I just don't agree with that in any sense of the mind. If the builder wants to do a private road and he gets the HOA and like Hilltop Estates to do that, I'm fine with that. But to make that a moratorium and let that potential private road philosophy start circumventing through town, I am not, at least from a planning perspective, don't agree with that.
I think there are a number of communities that have subdivision roads that are private, that are HOA based private. Maybe not, obviously not in Rutland, but I don't think that that's an unknown thing in the scheme of planning.
In this town, I mean, how many of subdivisions are private roads? I apologize, Susie's, but that's the senior one, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a one-way road, I'm talking like a larger subdivision. I don't think again, I apologize, I don't have it off the top of my head, but again, I just don't see, everything that comes with a private road I don't think this town wants to get into, that's my opinion.
Well, what's interesting is having dealt with HOAs before, they can become a nuisance over time. Because people come into that neighborhood, they come out of the neighborhood. Do they really wanna chase down, who's gonna take leadership of that HOA? Who's gonna collect the funds from the HOA? So there is a lot to consider. So Tim's right, in a sense where, the town has no legal authority to enforce the stipulations in an HOA, it's a private agreement. But yet, yes, there can be situations where the town has to step in and do something that you didn't necessarily expect to have to do on that roadway.
That's why, Lee, I'm this moratorium thing, just when and I apologize, I didn't see this until I looked at it today and I was like, oh my, no.
And like I said, it's just for discussion, it's not for a decision or anything, it's just kind of to open the conversation and get questions, pros, cons, considerations, everything, it's not by any means
I think it's more that we come up with a road acceptance policy.
Which I'm presenting to the board.
Yeah, I know John's working on
Yeah.
that, but I think that is since we've got so many subdivisions in play, having that there for the future subdivisions, Noble Hill, Bryce Lemon, that's still under construction, some of Brittenell Estates, having that in place, I think is gonna be huge to us. Moving into this next stage of this potential moratorium or private roads, I think, in my opinion, I don't think Rutland's ready for that yet, but that's my opinion.
I agree, Tim, and I think especially if it's only gonna be a temporary moratorium, because then you're left with accepting how many roads, reviewing all the conditions, and eventually, if they do get accepted, you're still gonna have to pay for them at some point. So I agree with you, I think my bigger concern is what you're probably addressing with the street acceptance policy is, I don't want a developer coming in to say, I built 8 more houses, I want you to accept 200 more feet of road, and then keep building and driving over that with heavy equipment and, you know, destroying the road that the town now has to pay for. That's the pieces that I have concerns with. But I agree with you, I don't think it makes any sense to force a private road with, I think, like you said, the HOAs can be a bigger headache than they're worth in this case,
And I
especially
think
if
it's not just the roads, when you get into HOAs and private, you start talking about sewer and water lines.
Yeah.
And again, this is my opinion, I'm not a mechanical engineer, our previous town DPW director was a hell of an engineer, a lot of respect for him, he's old school Worcester. And he'd seen a lot of problems that Worcester had made upon themselves with doing private systems, and then the city of Worcester had to go in and fix them. I don't think Rutland wants to walk down that path.
And to add to that, if there's not an HOA, legally, the ownership of that roadway, every homeowner for the length of their frontage would own to the center line of that road. So now you have a patchwork of ownership that makes things even more confusing, so there are pitfalls to that as well.
It's just for discussion, I
Yeah,
I don't,
No, Michelle, Michelle, I see you have your hand up, name and address, please.
Michelle Van Reet, 230 Charnock Hill Road. I have to disagree with Tim. If something, I have to pave my own driveway no matter how long it is, and we have a pretty long driveway. I have to worry about my water and sewer on my well and septic tank. And honestly, I think that that's a great idea to, if a subdivision has no other business on it other than the housing that's there, people in the town aren't using those roads, why not have them be private roads that only the people using those roads are using? And I also think it would be helpful as we build more and more in terms of if those are privately held and under the homeowners association and they have to take care of them, they have to clean them up, that would help us better manage snow removal, right? And have people complain about the schools not being open or school delays. And it's only going to get worse over time when we don't have money and we don't have equipment and we don't have the manpower to do things on a timely basis. So that sounds to me like a pretty good deal if you've got subdivisions with roads that are only servicing the people within that subdivision to have it. So I think we should really consider that. And just because we haven't done it in the past doesn't mean that we can't do it in the future.
But I to that point, with the snow removal, I have seen instances where private roadways in towns, when there's been a snowstorm, there has been some complaints by private homeowners that can't get out of their roadway, and the town ends up having to come in and plow to make sure they can get out of their roadway, so, to Tim's point,
And
there are.
they should be charged accordingly.
yeah,
They should be charged for that.
well, to Dick's point that he had, that he was thinking what I was thinking, he just said it first, is that I remember the ice storm here and what we had to do to cut in when there were, I would call them private roads, but unimproved roads. And for fire and for ambulance and for nebulizers and police, it was a mess. I know that's the extreme, but what I'm getting at is when you privatize roads, you don't guarantee access of fire, ambulance and police. And I get the DPW, I understand that, but I just, it's a big picture thing and I am not into privatization of things. It doesn't make sense to me for the town, cause the town loses control then is what I'm getting at, is I'm trying to say, I guess.
But I think if the HOAs have to manage the roads in such way, they should have to be built to certain specifications so you can get a fire truck or an ambulance down there and be kept clear. And if they're in violation, then you have a mechanism in place to whether you find the homeowners association or you find the what do you call it? The properties, like, I don't know, in their taxes, or not in their taxes, but you find the property owners. But you find a way to do it. Like, I don't know, I don't see how, I think I was just talking with it off. I don't see how that would make a difference. Like,
Michelle, I've been seeing, and I apologize, Lee,
I wanna stop, just get back from the back and forth. I think, like I said, this is more of a conversation, like
Yeah.
open the discussion, and I think we hear, but I think kind of debating it back and forth, we know kind of where you are, Tim, and we know kind of where Michelle is right now. I know Harry has his hand up, I think Mike has his hand up, so Harry, go ahead, and then Mike.
Let Mike go.
No, you're a board member, so go.
Okay. Is there a way right now, you did Hilltop Estates. Is there a way right now that the homeowners association will have enough money in it forced by the building plans where we don't have to worry if we do have to take it? See, that's my concern, is the money.
That's a loaded question, that's a good
Right,
question, because that's one of the issues of homeowners associations is, again, people turn over, they move out, new people move in. They might not even know they're supposed to be part of an HOA. Would you wanna be responsible for chasing 12 other homeowners down for their homeowners fees? And how much of a hassle that could be? So that presents its own set of issues. I can't answer that question,
And that's my point, is yes, we have this plan that we'd like to have it done that way, we'd like to put a moratorium on, but unless there's cash in the bank,
Right.
we're not getting any of that money if we have to do stuff. So if there's a way we can guarantee that the homeowners association has to fund a certain amount, like you've gotta have a $50,000 retained earning account or something.
And that's where you get into legalities again, a homeowners
Exactly.
association is privately,
Exactly.
it's a private agreement, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Name and address.
Mike Varicus, Stevens Way. No, I just wanna add, and when you're talking about private roads, I don't really see what the issue is. Living in Cool Sandy Beach, we've been down there for 20 years, all our roads are private. The town does plow, they do, for the winter. And there's a realization of the ambulances and fire trucks. Dick will attest, 2008, Welch is a public road. Welch was blocked. We only have one way in and one way out. Okay, so things like that happen. But in the wintertime, we get plowed once, but we're all responsible for our own roads. We're not, we have our own water. As I think a lot of these developments probably, I don't know if they're gonna be on town sewer or not, but I mean, if they have wells or whatever, we have our own private water and we have to take care of our own roads. So even if the town plows come through in the wintertime, and we wanna complain that they dig up our roads, which they have because they use the big thing instead of a pickup truck, we have to repair the roads. We're responsible for those roads. It's not a homeowner's position, but it is Cool Sandy Beach. We have like 40 homes down there. So these homeowners associations, if they become a development, I don't see a problem with them having private roads and taking care of themselves. We do it, and the town doesn't have anything to worry about, okay? So I'm just saying, I don't really see this an issue with private roads.
So I just wanna, we have a plow list of private roads for which the town plows. And that's been
Debated.
stopped. I don't know that it's been debated. I think since about 2018 or something, there was no additions to that. The select board at the time, I believe it was 2018, I'm not 100% sure, formally voted to basically say these are the roads that the town historically has plowed. And that's what we will continue to do that are private roads, and beyond that, we're not doing any other work. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit, that I think Cool Sandy Beach is in that grandfathered in area.
Yeah, the only, through the chair to you, is that the only problem you would have if you didn't do a private road is if there was a medical emergency there, and you couldn't get in there and you haven't plowed it, there could be an
So I
issue
think
there.
there's definitely some public safety questions and considerations
Right.
there. I know in the past, the fire department has and even DPW have the pickup trucks with plows. That the fire department has for that, as well as like the longer driveways even, and everything. But again, that's definitely a public safety consideration in this whole conversation.
I just wanted.
So I think we have some kind of questions and answers and things to consider.
Yeah, if the board has any questions that they'd like me to ask town council, just email me. Right now, I'm sensing that there's not a lot of traction in moving forward with something like this, but if you have any questions or any opinions, just send them to me and I can follow up on them for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And it sounds like maybe planning board hasn't really even had much of a conversation
No,
about
this is
it
the
either,
first time
so-
we've discussed this, so we might put, maybe I'll put this on an agenda on the 28th or something to just talk about that.
Yeah, cause I think that there's value to that also, for sure. So, thank you, and I think there's one other piece that we were hoping to do, and that's under old business, sorry to circle all around. It's a town charter committee, as, you may be aware, the select board seated the charter committee at our previous meeting. However, we still need a representative from the select board and we need a representative from the planning board. It was in the charge that the board approved that we would have representation from planning board and select board on. So I had asked that anybody that was interested fill out the exact same volunteer form that we had asked the public to fill out if they were interested, or to just more for transparency, so that when we come to a meeting, we know who's interested, and what they're bringing. In the past, when we've had kind of appointees, designees to certain boards and committees, it's just it's felt sometimes arbitrary and not knowing who's truly interested, why, or whatever. And so if they have the time or the capacity to do that. So that was kind of my rationale for asking for that. It wasn't to try to be a jerk or anything like that. It was, again, if we're asking the public to do it, then I think that there's value to kind of offering why interested to serve or not. So planning, if you want to go first, by all means. I don't know what your packet is, because this is a planning board, planning board appointee is a planning board decision. We were just hoping to have the appointees, if the board was amenable, designated tonight, so that charter committee could then be formed and meet with the Collins Center and officially organize and move forward with their meeting in charge.
Are we looking to appoint?
Well, I'd like to do it, but I'd like to present it to the board and talk with the board before I say, yeah, I'm with the planning board. I wanted to talk with you guys about and see if it was amenable, or if somebody else wanted to. We haven't had that discussion yet, because we haven't had our meeting. I filled the application out and sent it in to, I don't know who I sent it into. It went into a bucket, but I just did that. But I didn't want you guys to appoint until I talked with the board itself, and I hadn't had that opportunity yet.
Well, you have 4 out of 5 members that you
I
could
guess I'm
always,
doing
you
it
could-
now.
you
I'd
could-
like to take care of that and for the planning board if no one else wants to.
I know you don't want to, so.
Well,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, see? Yeah, see?
Norm,
have you received?
Dick, you're okay with that?
Have you received?
There we
the
go.
letter?
Yep, the boards have it in their packet,
Yeah.
or the board rather has it in their packet. It's also in the public packet online.
I just didn't wanna be
Everybody
presumptuous without
wants Tim.
talking to the board.
Yeah, seems, there we go.
I hear you.
So would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
There you go, Tim.
Second?
Second.
Okay, and that is to recommend
Recommend Tim.
Tim's appointment to the charter committee.
Correct.
Yes.
Just like to make it just already wrote out.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll vote for myself.
You gonna vote nay, Tim?
No, I'm not.
So
So all in favor?
Aye.
You did, okay, aye.
I'm looking at this, I don't believe there's any, before we move on with our select board stuff, I don't believe there's any other planning board specific business on the agenda. You're more than welcome to not adjourn and stay, that's totally fine. Otherwise, if you want to adjourn, I want to provide you that opportunity, and you're still more than welcome to stay, even if you adjourn.
Nice.
I'd love to, but supper sounds good.
So,
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Planning board is adjourned.
So,
thank you.
Just to let you know, whatever happened to the HOA that was over at Legends there, Brunel? How did that work out? Did you take care of it, fix it?
Sure. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sticking around, but I gotta ask.
Well, let's just say the town was supposed to be involved in it.
Leah, before
Never did.
we never got the date squared away, right? Are we?
Correct, that'll be, I mean, you guys can stick around for sure, that's totally fine, but that's a select board decision.
What if we can't make the date? Cause
Roger's not available any other date in February than February 6th, just so you know, he emailed us a few minutes ago.
Right, so we're trying to coordinate, obviously, a lot of different schedules.
Cause our hearing is the 21st, if I'm not mistaken.
It's the 14th. It's next Tuesday.
That's when our meeting is, isn't it?
The hearing's the night of your planning board meeting.
Okay.
Is when it's opened, I believe, per what John had said.
For the marijuana.
Correct. It's been published.
Yeah, been posted.
I don't know, I looked online, I thought all I saw was a public hearing for the
Subdivision meeting?
You can confirm with John, I think he's just out in the hallway, but it is there.
Okay, so it's for, I apologize, I thought it was the 21st, I was doing the 2 weeks, so I was wrong. So the 14th, so we have
Accessory dwelling
no
units.
margin for continuation on that meeting then, on that hearing.
I think you would meet on the 14th and 28th.
Correct.
And then, because even if we were tentatively looking originally at the 30th,
Yeah.
then it was still 2 meetings before.
Okay.
That was the conversation that I remember John looking, when he
Yes,
looked
cause
at
when
the
we
dates.
coordinated, when we proposed the original date of January 30th, John and I worked together to make sure that the timing was gonna work. And so he went through that proposed calendar with me before we presented that to the board.
Restrictions and provisions.
Okay.
So it was advertised on the 30th and actually again today.
Okay, good. So we're good. I just, from my perspective, again, just as a member, the 6th is a better choice, but I would prefer the Springtown meeting, but that's my opinion. All right, that's.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
See ya.
Alright, moving around, sorry. We are done with the joint meeting. So should we continue with the town charter committee? Because I think we have some other new business before we get to the building use and special act. So, or I know Austin,
Just briefly, you want me to, I'll be very brief, I promise.
yes,
So we're not gonna do the select board appointee, we're gonna,
let's,
I'll be very brief,
Okay.
I promise. There's a
Let's-
lot there, but I won't talk about it.
alright, we have communication, member comments, announcements, and town administrator update. I just wanna wish everyone a happy new year. I hope everyone had a nice holiday season. Our hearts and thoughts are with everyone in town, families and beyond. Does anyone else have any other members have comments? Town administrator.
That was my update, no, I'm just kidding. Happy New Year. I also, again, just wanna take a moment to acknowledge, the past few weeks have been very challenging for the organization, Sullivan family, the Grace family. I just wanna really emphasize that town staff work very hard, and this has been a very challenging past few weeks, so I think we're trying to find ways to provide resources, where available to everyone. I just don't wanna minimize the impact that the past few weeks have had on staff. And thank everyone for their hard work and the greater community for their support of the town. And some good news, we received notification actually today that we've received a $3,000 grant from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Land Conservation Assistance Grant to assist the Open Space Committee with finalizing the development of an updated open space and recreation plan. Those funds will be used to contract with CMRPC to complete that work. Just a heads up, we've scheduled a budget review meeting with the Wachusett Regional School District with the Select Board and Finance Committee for Thursday, March 13th.
Austin,
Yep.
pause on that. Is it possible to reach out to Bay Path to see if they would be amenable and available to, because I think cause that's generally the one that's
Joint.
joint with FinCom, I believe, is that.
We can try that,
And
see if they're available.
normally we try to do the schools together, so I don't know what Bay Path's timeline is, I don't know if we've heard yet, but just to be mindful.
Yep, we can do
Thank
that. Just two final things. We're continuing to move through the budget process. I really just am looking at some point for some direction from the board. I think it's getting to a point where I'm starting to be asked by staff, what's the plan? And I need some direction. I think we've been talking about budget and our overall financial condition for months now. And I really wanna make this as smooth as possible, and that will need some decision-making from our policy-making boards, most specifically this board. I'm not asking for any discussion tonight, but I just wanna emphasize that the finance team and town staff, and I'm sure the community is curious and is looking for some direction. And there's a large packet included attached to my town administrator's report. This is in response to one of the goals that the board established for me this year, which is further developing our multi-year financial planning model. and I've been looking at some ways to try to do this, and one of the best ways, and I found a really good tool when I went to the ICMA conference, which are financial indicators, and the report that I have attached looks at 12 different indicators, whether it's economic revenues, property tax revenues, property values, population, school growth, the demographics by age of our community. All that goes into this report and assesses sort of a score, if you will. There's 3 scores right now: favorable, marginal, and unfavorable, and those are sort of automatically created by the data that's in there. All of this data is directly from reputable sources, so directly from the Department of Revenue, Census Bureau, our Schedule A reports that we submit to the DOR. All of these are certified by the Department of Revenue or some other organization. This is a best practice, and as I mentioned, is utilized across the country. I found this particular tool at the Department of Revenue Division of Local Services, but it also kind of follows some of the best practices for financial indicators. As I mentioned in ICMA, there's actually a manual there that kind of lists the best way to do this. So I don't intend to discuss this or present this tonight. I wanted to give this to you early for a future meeting, for the board to be able to absorb that, ask any questions that you may have in advance of a future discussion. And I will be publishing this as well online for people to be able to access. And this will be something hopefully that we can continue to build upon annually, and just every year look at our financial condition and look at some of this data and see where we are. And again, this is more so taking a look at the past. It presents 10 years of data there, and try to model in the future what some of that looks like. So especially you think about some of the economic related revenues or expenses. Can we sort of model that over 10 years rather than, I think right now we're just potentially forecasting over the next few years. Whereas this is a much more information to absorb. So I just wanted to present this to you tonight for you to be able to look at. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer some tonight, but
Can it be transmitted to FinCom also, like officially transmitted, just so that they have it as well? I know that they often are looking for the same kind of information when we discuss the budget and kind of long-term planning also. I believe that their next scheduled meeting, or they hadn't talked about scheduling a meeting until the end of January or the beginning of February, I believe. So I realize that may not officially meet, but if they can have it also in an official communication versus just stumbling upon it online.
so I'd like you guys to discuss it first.
Okay.
I think right now it's kind of a draft. Even though I've spent a lot of time on it, I also wanna make sure that it has information that the board feels is appropriate. As the CEOs, you are also responsible for the budget.
Yeah.
And the financial condition of the community, so if there's things that you wanna add to it, for example, I wanna be able for the board to have that discussion, and then we can transmit it, very similar to kinda how the budget works, right? Is you guys approve it, transmit it to the FinCom, and rolls from there, so. There's a lot here, I recognize that, so of course, if you have any questions over the next few weeks, just reach out and we can
Thank you.
Austin, if I might, this is pretty impressive. I like to get into the detail work, future stuff. Would getting a copy of the Evaluating Financial Condition, a handbook for local government, help me understand this better?
Yeah, I bought a copy, I can make a copy of it for you, well,
I'm
I
gonna
don't know if that's
review,
legal to say that, but I can find a way to make sure you have.
I wanna
information
review
that's
this, but I just wanna make sure I understand how each piece applies to the other piece. That's all.
So instead of giving you the full book, there's kind of a summary 4 or 5 page document that kind of talks at a very high level. I can give you that if you wanna
Okay.
get into more detail, we can
Sure.
talk
That'd be
offline
great.
about that. You can borrow my book. Does that work, Sherry?
Why are you looking at me?
I can
Okay.
get you that information.
I'm excited to get into this. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Austin. Does anyone have any questions for Austin in any of his updates? I wanna thank you for the work, you and Melissa and John for the work to get the $3,000 grant from the Land Conservation Assistant Grant Program, because I know that that's been a big hurdle, getting the technical assistance for that, to finish that, so I appreciate that work. Thank you. Moving on, thank you, Austin. We'll go back to our town charter committee. The planning board has appointed their member, we have select board appointments. I believe in our packets, we have online applications from Jen and I, and Harry had emailed saying that he was interested but not filling out the application. And so I am comfortable, I wasn't sure what the response would be. I am comfortable not being considered for it. However, I also am happy to be considered also. I think that I will be attending the meetings, and I think that the public input process is huge for this process, that it really needs to be community driven and not a committee or a utilitarian decision. So from I believe from the email, Harry, you can speak to it. It says that that Harry's interested in being
Would you like me to read it for the record?
Sure, you can.
Okay. Leah, this went out to all the board, to Austin, and to Tamika. Leah, this is to inform the board that I am requesting to be considered for the position of the select board appointment to the charter committee. I am not filling an application for the position as I see no need at this time. Also, it is stipulated in the charter that one member of the select board must be appointed to the charter committee with no mention of an application to do so. Also, the board did not have the opportunity to discuss this process. I understand that this is usual committee appointment protocol. I also believe that does not apply in this situation. With that being said, if the board wishes to have the person chosen to present a bio of their history and accomplishments to the committee, I would be happy to do so if I am chosen. Regards, Harry.
Thank you, Harry. Jen, I'll let you present yours, I guess.
I don't have too much to add. I think I have similar sentiments to you, Leah. I'm excited about pursuing a charter, and I'm looking forward to I feel like something I hear often in town is we've always done it this way, and I'm very much looking forward to researching and identifying areas where we could maybe move forward in a different manner to be more efficient, more productive as a town, and not staying the same, if it makes sense. So I think that's, for me, my interest is learning how we can grow, how we can make something that makes our town government smooth and efficient, and work with the public, as you said, and just try and get as much engagement as we can from the residents to move this forward.
So I have, like I said, I will withdraw my interest because I think that there's interest from others on the board and committee, or on the board. And I think, Harry, do you wanna speak to kind of, since it's kind of you and Jen, do you wanna speak to what kind of your interest on serving on the charter committee is?
Sure. This is a really unique experience for the town. Charters really only happen once, they get done once, and I think we've picked a lot of good people to do this. It's gonna take a long time, there's gonna be a lot of players in it. And I've been involved in the town in one way or another for over 20 years. And I think I bring a lot of experience to the charter committee in the way it will be developed and move forward. I'm excited for it. I'd be excited to be on it. I think it's a great start, if you will. Everybody calls it a new constitution. So I'd really like the opportunity to be on it, and help move that forward.
I guess I have a little bit of a, this was kind of my bias, was understanding that we had decided not to include the schools given the interest in, or the dynamics of a regional schools for both Wachusett and Bay Path. And I think that that's kind of where I was coming from, was I feel I have as a municipal rep to WRSD, I have that side of things, as well as a student at Bay Path, a little bit of that side. And so I wonder from both of you, kind of your understanding and or willingness to include or not the schools in that, because I think although it's that dynamic piece of it's 60% of our budget, but also we intentionally as a board didn't include them because of a whole lot of reasons.
If I, and I could be misremembering this, but I thought we removed the school committee because we're essentially bound by the district agreement, which is we have no control over, so there's not much we can do other than reference whatever that agreement would be if we need to in the charter.
You're right. General law pretty much controls in this situation, and we're left out of that.
Right.
It's totally a separate, independent organization that really reports to the town, but that's about it. So I don't see them as in need of being involved in this.
I mean, believe me, I would love to be able to do more as far as a charter with the schools. I don't know what that would look like, but like I said, it was my understanding that our hands were kind of tied with what that could look like. So I mean, I certainly think I value your experience with all of that and any input that could be provided for any of the relevant topics or areas of a charter that might entail. I haven't delved too much into it
Yeah.
on that side.
And I don't have an answer. I know we are and you're both correct, for MGL and Wachusett, we're bound a lot by the district agreement. Bay Path is a little bit maybe more, I'm not as familiar on the Bay Path side. But we are bound somewhat. Also, I also know that even Hubbardston, who we look to a little bit in their charter and a regional school, do speak somewhat to the schools as well, so it's not totally excluded. And I think, like I said, a huge part of our budget as well as a huge part of our community is strong schools. So I just wanna be mindful that we're not, that they're not totally excluded from that. And I think, like I said, I will plan to attend the open, the community involvement. I hope a lot of our residents do and our school committee members and everything do as well, because I think that's a huge piece. But I, again, would look probably to the Collins Center to see what the best avenue is for that as well. I guess one of my other questions kind of is, as far as working with the Collins Center and knowing that this needs to be a very Rutland-specific document, but following or working with them for guidance as to kind of best practice and everything. How do you see that relationship with the Collins Center going, Harry?
I don't know how I can answer that. I mean, the Collins Center is really gonna take forefront on it. We're gonna follow their lead. We're gonna do what they kind of tell us to do, and we'll get some input, but I think for the most part, they're the ones who are gonna be controlling this event as we go forward. So, whatever the committee decides to do with them and how they react to it is up to the committee, but I'm willing to work with the Collins Center. Nothing much else you can do.
Yeah, I agree. That was my thought as well, is they're kind of there for the guidance on walking us through what we need to talk about and what we need to determine as far as the content of a charter. So I would certainly lean on them for their experience and expertise, and if they've got anything that could be researched or options, if there's something changes from what we already have as an existing bylaw, for example. I would hopefully look to them to be able to point some of those options out for continued discussion by the committee.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I know Jen and I are both one on there, and we all have very good reasons for it. But do you think this is something that we should wait for the full board to vote on?
I was
So I was
wondering.
just-
That's right, well, we're
Yeah.
going through this, but I'm just saying,
I was just sitting
doesn't
here
feel right, you know?
thinking the same thing, because with Tom having dropped off and
Yes.
Paul not being here, and Tom said that he should be in person for the next, I know I just pushed planning board to make their appointment so that we could organize the committee, and so that's my hesitation. I didn't know until late this afternoon that Paul wasn't going to be in attendance, and I didn't realize until Tom dropped off that he was done for the night either. I was under the impression he would be on Zoom, so I
I'd like this to be a full board decision.
I don't disagree for something of this caliber.
Okay.
Sorry for that. We'll stay under old business, so we're gonna hold that until our next meeting. 2025 annual license renewals, we have a few more that we need these were outstanding licenses, there were pieces that were missing. And I believe we have auto dealer, everything has been submitted and all the sign off has been done, correct, Tamika? So I would entertain a motion to approve the auto dealer licenses as presented.
So moved.
Leah, do you want to do them all together? Is this?
I was gonna do them separate just because it was auto and common vic.
Okay.
It's two separate, just that way.
Okay, and if I might, these are everybody that is looking to have a license renewed, or just the ones that we have been completed?
No, so at the last meeting you did the lion's share of them that had
Okay.
been completed. These were the ones that still had outstanding things that were required, largely inspections by the fire department.
Okay,
I will say that there is one outstanding auto dealer that I have not been able to bring before you because they have not paid the fee.
and he is not allowed to practice right now,
Correct, and he's been notified of that in writing.
okay. All right, then
Is that one on this list?
He's not on that list.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
you wanna make a motion, Jen?
I think,
Yeah, just for the auto dealers?
yeah, just for, yeah.
Yeah, I move to approve and sign nope, that's not the right one. To approve the licenses for BRZ Auto Sales, Anthony's Auto, and Modern Classic as presented.
Second,
Any conversation? Roll call, Harry.
second, aye.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. And then we have Yang's Kitchen for the common vic, so I would entertain a motion to approve and sign Yang's Kitchen, common vic as presented.
I make a motion that we accept the common victualler license approval for Yang's Kitchen.
Second.
Conversation? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. I know we have some people here, I think, for the building use policy, but if we can move on to new business, because this hopefully will be quick. We have the setting of the date for the special town meeting. I believe the only available option is Thursday, February 6th, based on the availability of space. And the other consideration, part of the other concern with the 30th is the meeting on the 30th that is booked here is the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee. One of our FinCom members is a representative to that committee, as well as a number of, that committee usually draws a large Rutland attendance. And so we were trying to also be mindful of not trying to double book the potential for two significant meetings, in addition to the space. And then it sounds like February 6th is the only other day that is available for KP and Roger. So is the board, based on our vote last meeting to hold a special town meeting, is the board amenable to the 6th?
Is this the only item that's gonna be on it? The
I mean, that's the.
LMEs?
Yes, I believe that that's the proposal is to set the meeting and then have this be the only We would also essentially open and close the warrant tonight as well. Sorry, I am shuffling all my papers. I believe is the proposal. Just so that it doesn't turn into, so people are coming, similar to the bylaw committee, or the bylaw, it's advertised as a one option. I believe it's a Thursday, the first Thursday of February.
I know you said Randy brought up a concern on availability, would we just need to appoint a?
Randy is available.
He is.
He just pointed out that the RDIC, that would normally be their regular meeting night.
Okay.
But I did notify them and it's not an issue to pick another night for them.
Thank you.
And I would say if, based on the communication from the clerk's office, with a later start time of if we set a 7 o'clock start time, it's possible that RDIC could still hold I know oftentimes they meet at 5, this past meeting they met at 6,
So their regular time is 6 now?
Yeah.
I just know that 2 of their members are also members of the planning board, so I don't know if they'd wanna try to squeeze it in on one night, but we can give them the option.
Right. And it sounds like you may have had some more direct communication, Austin and Tamika, with the clerk's office, but it sounds like the 6:30 would be good, but 7 would be more ideal. Is that your understanding? Yeah, so if we move forward on with February 6th at 7 PM, and that way we could post early at 6:30 if, needed.
We have plenty of time for this then, to get it done?
Yep, that's
From the board and everything too?
correct. So the proposed calendar that I put in your packet outlines the time frame and shows that we're able to meet all of the required timelines under MGL. And it also does include a joint meeting with the finance committee for the board to make their recommendations, and then the board would sign the warrant that evening so we could post it within the 14-day requirement.
So it's in the planning board packet that Tamika had put together for tonight's meeting on the back of the first page. So
Can anybody remember if this is the first time that we've ever held a special meeting for one article?
I think it's the first time in recent history. I don't know if it's the first time ever, but I definitely think it's the first time for sure in recent history. Like I said, I just keep going back to the fact that this was a conversation we kind of had at our last meeting, and the board unanimously agreed to call a special town meeting. So yeah, I think it is, but I also push back a little bit and think we need to be it was part of my rationale for continuing to hold a fall special town meeting is that we need to be able to move town business. We hear often that government is so slow. Then we hear that we try to push things through and pull stuff over people's heads, and it's that vicious cycle of,
I know why we're doing it, I'm hoping this will not be a precedent.
I don't
think so.
Anybody is just gonna be able to say, that's my issue, so I know why.
I think this is certain circumstances.
Okay.
And
All right.
Under the select board's purview is to call a special town meeting at any time.
Right.
And we can always be at the legitimate hand of a citizen's petition with 200 signatures. We confirmed it wasn't 250, that it was 200, so
Okay.
So there is that also.
That's February 6th, okay.
So I would entertain a motion to call the annual town meeting for Thursday, February 6th at 7 PM. And I still propose to hold it here. I hear the considerations and the concerns. It's still accessible here. It's an open building. And I think we have to just be mindful of space constraints.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Conversation. Roll call.
second
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. And then, do we need a motion to open the warrant for the February 6th meeting? And then,
Technically, you don't have to close it, but I would say motion to open the warrant, however you want the warrant to be constructed with which article and then just finalize it.
So I would we agreed on option one, which was the draft language in the packet that we have. And so I would entertain a motion to open the warrant and place one article, Article 1, as presented as option 1 in our correspondence with KP.
So moved.
Second,
Conversation? Roll call, Harry.
second aye.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. Is that, should we close it, or we just said to place one article, so?
Yeah.
Okay. And then just for the public, Tuesday, the 14th, Planning Board will open their public hearing. Thursday, the 16th is the proposed joint meeting of us and FinCom to make recommendations and finalize the warrant. We would sign the warrant then to be posted. Thursday, the 23rd would be the last day to post the special town meeting warrant. And then Thursday, the 6th, at 6:30, we would post at 6:30 for any business that needs to happen, and then the special would start at 7.
Yeah, and we'll, for the public, we'll publish all of this online, we will advertise it,
Yeah.
we'll make sure that everybody is aware of it and has access to the information.
Thank you. And I realize that it's kind of different, and I think as town grows and government expands or changes, not necessarily even expands, just changes, we need to be amenable to some of these. And we'll do our best to try to publicize and get the word out that this is what it is and it's one article and it is what it is. The audio should be better here and yeah. Thank you. Then we have the 2024 annual report for liquor licenses. Tamika, thank you for this. I appreciate this because I know that we have gone back and forth. So this is, we need to review and sign the annual report for the ABCC, Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. So this is, I lost my paper. This is just a summary of our licenses granted and our fee schedules. If you remember last time, we had discussed certifying our population. And this is a separate piece, Tamika, if I remember correctly, this is a separate piece, it goes somewhere separately. That certifies or declares our number of licenses granted and our fee schedules, what our revenue was, and that there were no violations. And that's correct, there were no violations.
That's correct. So they're seeking violations at the town level, not the state level.
Okay.
And that's correct, none at the town level.
Thank you.
The new restaurant?
Yeah.
Are they finally up and running? I
No, the
saw a lot of
license has not-
cars there, but no?
Well, there's other businesses in the building, so it's probably for that. They still have not been issued their liquor license by the state. And for your next meeting on January 21st, we'll be holding a public hearing for their common victualler license. They also still have their Board of Health permitting to go through, so they're not quite there yet.
Okay.
So I believe we need a motion to approve and sign the 2024 annual report for the ABCC as presented. Is there a second?
Second,
Roll call, Harry.
second aye.
Ledger I. Sorry.
Whitman, aye. I know we're all out of order tonight, thank you. Thank you, Tamika, for pulling that together and keeping us organized on it all.
Just a question.
Sure.
When I'm looking at these licenses, I'm seeing wine and malt licenses, 2 each. Those aren't counted in the regular licenses for LMEs?
The LMEs are based on off-premise licenses, and so it doesn't matter if it's wine and malt or all beverages, it's the total number for off-premise.
So we have 2 licenses for off-premise.
No, we have 4. So we have,
We have on-premise of 6 and off-premise of 2. So both of those are, when we were talking about the 8 that we have.
no, we have 10. We have 10 licenses that we've issued total. 6 are on-premise, 4 are off-premise. So our off-premise, we have Main Street Discount Liquors, Colonial Convenience, Rutland Marketplace, and I can't think of the other off the top of my head.
So this is showing all alcoholic beverages on premises 6, all alcoholic beverages off premises 2, which I think is Main Street and Colonial, because that's all. And then wine and malt on premise, which is
Wine and malt off premise is Rutland Marketplace, because they have the seasonal license for all alcohol.
right, and that's not included in this, I don't think.
I'm just trying to figure out where the 8 came from.
That's our quota. That's not the number we have issued, that's the number we can issue for
Okay.
off premise.
But it's based on the number of licenses we've already issued, right?
No, it's based on our population.
The LME, but
Our
I'm trying-
quota is based off of our population. The LMEs is 20% of what we've actually issued.
which is
Off-premise.
11,
Off
which is
Off premise.
10, but off-premise is 6, is 2, off-premise is 2, and 1 is 3.
So each of those licenses have different ways of being calculated by the Commonwealth based off of our population. So it's not always gonna be, 1 for each of the licenses. They have different calculations and
Okay,
that's based
so
off
a
of
1 could be a
general law.
3 that we add to the 8 type of thing. I'll discuss this, I don't wanna take time with that.
Just to
I'm
add
just
this-
curious how this comes out, cause I'm not seeing the 8 there.
It's not easy.
The seasonal license is not included on this because the state does not include seasonal licenses with the annual process, which is why you did not see the one for Rutland Marketplace. That one will renew probably in February for their April 1st time period when they can start. So that's counted towards the off-premise, but it's not reflected on this report.
Okay,
But I have the whole report in my office if you wanna see
Yeah, I
the
just wanna
breakdown of
understand that a
everything.
little
If you really wanna be confused, you should read the Mass General Law for it. It's so confusing.
Yeah, and then there's
Okay.
stuff for cordials and things that the town doesn't even offer.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
We have acceptance of gift, we have 3 traffic control signs. Austin, Tamika, do you wanna?
We were graciously donated by planning board member Dick Williams, 3, what are they called, traffic paddles. Basically, they're the flip signs that say stop or slow, based off of some feedback on the 56 project. He, through his connections at Mass DOT, was able to acquire 3 signs to donate to the police department for future use for future infrastructure projects. So just in compliance with General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A.5, it's the board's authority to accept gifts on behalf of the community. And the estimated value for these are about $100 or so each.
And these can be loaned out to crossing guards at events, stuff like that, or,
So, I don't know if the police chief has any intent to use them.
okay,
They have a pretty good system, but certainly, especially with the project, the 56 project, I think it was some good feedback where you have a hard time seeing them tell you to stop. This sign was a little bit
Okay.
easier, so this would be for town use.
so they have them. So
Yeah.
you can just-
Yeah,
okay.
right now,
His
they're in the
discretion.
annex.
His discretion.
I would entertain a motion to accept the gift of 3 traffic paddles to the Rutland Police Department with gratitude to Mr. Dick Williams.
Motion so,
Second. Roll call, Harry.
second aye,
Ledger I. Whitman I. If anybody wants to see, I'm accustomed to them, it's what we had in Pennsylvania. But so thank you, Mr. Williams, for that, and I appreciate that. It is now 8:30. I know we have potentially some commenters here for the building use policy. I know, Jean, you had given some feedback already. I hadn't had plans to move forward with, make any formal decisions on that yet. What's Jen and Harry, I feel like it's just the 3 of us. What's the board's pleasure for this? Do you want to have some continued discussion on the revisions to building use? I know we had asked at the last meeting if anybody had comments on section 7, 8, and 9 of the recall, to send them along so we could maybe move this forward, just forward in the process, as far as we had some outstanding legal comments or questions, and then also getting some other community and other elected board input.
as far as personally, as far as the building committee, I read through all the stuff that was sent to me from all the towns. And I could probably take a little from this one, a little from this one, a little from this one to make it. But I don't wanna go through all that tonight. So I'd like to hear if anybody's here to make comment on the building committee from the audience, because this is bigger than I thought it was gonna be. It's very involved to do it right, so. I'm just not, I could postpone it tonight, that's for sure.
Okay. So I just wanna, I've had some kind of comments, feedbacks, and I think we've run into just a few challenges, is working, I think, with the library trustees and the librarian to ensure that there's a current and accessible calendar for the library space. That was one of the hiccups in the special meeting planning. And so just if there's a way that we can, through the policy, work with the trustees within MGL and the librarian and everything to make that accessible. And I continue to hear the community frustration with the inability to have any access to the building on Glenwood, or very limited access to the building on Glenwood. I've also heard some conflicting information as far as the ability to have access to rooms here. I've heard very positive feedback and people have been very, very thankful and have had no issues at all. And then I've heard other groups express concerns and not necessarily having a clear understanding as to what the process is for the rooms here in this building. I know we've also been adding in the annex as well as the Wood Studio as town-owned spaces as well. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there. And I think to Jean's comments, I've heard in public comment, I've heard that as well, that in many, many communities, there's a multi-use, multifunctional space that is available and in use essentially from maybe 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. or later by all ages and stages and everything, and that in many, many communities, it works very well. Many communities in Massachusetts, as well as many communities outside of Massachusetts. Many of our surrounding communities have that dynamic. So I think that I've heard that from many groups as well.
It needs someone in charge of it all. And the policies, I have had them. I could recreate them for you, go through your thing. It's not hard. It just takes somebody in charge to tell everybody else what to do to make it happen. So all the parties have to be willing, and if they're not, they need to be told that this is the way it is. This building is for everyone. Look at the use on that calendar. The use ends, it's empty in the afternoons.
Right.
It's empty in the evenings, it's empty on the weekends. We rented it out on the weekends. We used it from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. Every day of the week. It's not hard.
So I think one consideration maybe for the board is we have a number of policies that are kind of that I would like to get through. Is there interest in the board in, a couple of us working on a stack of policies to kind of go through, maybe, in this case, building use policy, maybe the two of you work with Jean to kind of, if Jean has experience or something, or if involve community members if applicable. I think Jean, you're on Council on Aging, correct? No, you're not. Oh,
No, that's a board that you appoint.
right. Your own friends.
I'm a friend. I
Sorry.
sign up.
Yeah, sorry. So I don't know if there's in a way to kind of move policy forward, work together outside and then bring something before, a more polished version before the board so that we can kind of move forward or not.
Yeah, I think for us to spend our time, we'll take line number 2, line number 3, we'll put it here, is really a waste of our time. So, yeah, if we could meet, some of us from the board can meet and just go over the stuff that we have, because there's some really good stuff in what I got. But we don't have any basic policy on it, so we're starting from scratch on that, basically, unless you had one at one time, like you said.
I did, and I see that we had one at one time, and it says to contact the rec director, and the rec director has posted on Facebook that she doesn't know anything about it. So there's a break somewhere that I think comes to supervision and someone in charge.
I was
Yeah.
gonna ask, but I wanted to clarify, ask for and for public knowledge. It is technically a community center, correct? Like there was never any formal decision to state senior center for the Glenwood building, is that correct?
Correct.
So it's just,
Right?
Yeah.
You can speak past board experience.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, I can try to find the article that was presented, I believe in the nineties, late nineties, mid to late nineties, for the town to take ownership of that building and property, and it was for community use. Beyond that, it wasn't earmarked as a specific portion of the community, it was total community use. I can speak to historically, when we moved to town in 2010, that building was mostly for the community and recreation. And then I don't know what year the senior center was relocated to that building, and then since that, it's been a stronger challenge to have it as a mixed-use building.
If you go see Karina, she has it on her bulletin board, the date of a meeting where the COA was invited to use the building with them.
Okay.
I forgot what the date was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember at some point, but I don't remember the specifics, so.
I was just gonna add from personal experience, back in even the 2000s, that's where Rutland Summer Fun Camp was held. It was at that building. So it definitely has, at one time, did have other uses.
My kids had Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts there. They had indoor soccer practice there. There used to be a batting cage in there for like T-ball batting practice and stuff over the winter. I believe,
There was basketball hoops.
I was gonna say, I believe there are basketball hoops for indoor basketball, and so it was a truly multifunctional space.
And I understand the frustration where things weren't taken care of and groups who were there didn't do what they were supposed to do, and little by little all were excluded. But that's because no one was enforcing a policy. When you leave, this is what the room is supposed to look like, empty. There should be nothing in it.
Right.
Just for starters, you put your stuff back in your closet.
So it sounds like we got a challenge.
Okay, so is there anyone else here to speak to the building use? Cause I know that was a potential hot topic. I don't wanna dissuade it, but I know it's late and I don't wanna keep us any later than necessary. So we'll continue that work, and I guess, Jean, maybe if you're amenable to kind of working with us,
Give me who?
I mean,
I'll start off working with you, cause I know Mike's on the COA and you're on the council of the Friends. So between the two of you, we should be
I'm
able to.
just a friend, I'm not on anything.
No, but you're part of the Friends,
Yeah, I
okay,
pay my $10.
right, same here, okay, so.
Yeah, cause I'm just saying I would like to see some
So
information
maybe
too.
between the three of us, we can at least lay some groundwork of what we're trying to,
well, so then I
get
think,
accomplished
I
here.
think that this is a board policy, so I was leaning more just on Jean because she has a little bit of the of historical from previous work in another community, and how they've managed a similar facility, which is why I was leaning on Jean. But other than that, I was thinking, because then I feel like we need, if we're gonna involve the Council on Aging, then we also need to involve pieces of recreation. And that's not going, I don't suspect that it would potentially get us where we need to go. Because I think this, to Jean's point, we need a board policy that then empowers staff to enforce the policy. And that means that we need to empower, we, 5 of us, need to empower staff to enforce the policy.
I just, looking through the stuff, I'll agree and disagree with you on that, Leah. Cause I think that policy is pretty extensive in what I have seen and what they are gonna be asked to do, and Jean's right. Back then, if we had a policy, you pick up after yourself, if you don't, you pay us some money beginning, if you don't, we keep it. We're gonna call it a cleanup cost. All of these things, or, it's gonna cost you $200 to rent this place. And if you wanna rent this, it's gonna be a 6 months, you gotta come up to us ahead of time. All of these things, regardless recreation or who it is what goes into a building policy, and that's why I was trying to.
So it sounds like we can maybe do a little bit of, we have our building use, our current building use policy. We can go back with that, we can go back and learn a little bit of the, we can maybe compile some of the history, just the timeline history and everything, what has been done, what hasn't been done, and then we'll hold off on officially reaching out to Jean or anyone until maybe next meeting, and we have a full board here to move forward with how we're gonna address the policy. Because I think I very much wanna be mindful that if we're going to include one entity, and to the point even with the library, right? Like, we need to have a conversation with the trustees and the librarian, make sure that we're within that piece of MGL. So I don't want it to be solely about the building on Glenwood, and I don't want it to be solely about this building. It needs to be a comprehensive, broad, comprehensive building use policy. And I think, to Jean's point, some of that is just the empowering the management of a calendar and the space. So I take it all back for right now. For this special act, we still had to go through section 7, 8, and 9. Given that we don't have a full board, similar to the rest of this stuff, and we don't even have we have 3 of us, it's not even that we have 4 of us. Do we want to table this until our next meeting?
I think so.
We could do that, sure.
Okay, is there, so we're gonna hold that. Our next meetings, we have a tentative meeting with, the joint meeting with FinCom on, I believe, the 16th, we said, to discuss the warrant, or to discuss and make recommendations. And then our next regular scheduled meeting is January 21st. And then in February, we have February 3rd, we have February 6th will be the special town meeting, and we have February 18th, as of right now. Are there any future agenda requests? I'm happy to hear them now. As always, feel free to email myself, Austin, and Tamika if anything pops into your mind between now and then. We do have a couple
Not an agenda request, but just a question. Stormwater bills today, and I know we had talked at our December meeting about having an explanation go with it, or as a separate mailer.
Yeah, so
Do we
I
know
think
when
the
that's
discussion was not to have it as a tax bill. Weston and Sampson is working on a mailer to get us also credit for our educational score. I don't think that's been finalized yet, but it's gonna speak more broadly about the utility, what the $100 pays for, but it's not speaking specifically about why are you receiving this $100 fee, like what was done with the water and sewer bills.
Okay. I still have a concern that that's a really big jump from the last one, and there's not, and even if it's just a matter of, like, I looked at the stormwater utility page today, and the table with the budget on it is still from FY24. So can we at least even update that with this year's budget to maybe hopefully explain, we arrived at the $100 because this was the approved budget and we divided that by X number of, I just wanna have some, I don't want people to think that $100 was just some arbitrary number we came up with just to take more money from the residents. There's a valid reason why we arrived at that number. I just wanna make sure that that's.
Sure, yeah. Anytime you find information on the town website that's not accurate, if you can just reach out and let us know.
And just, I think the previous one was a 6-month bill or something, and not a full month or full year bill, and this is, I believe, the first full year bill, I believe, is that correct? Full fiscal year, I believe last year.
Yeah, this covers a full year of expenses, and then also I think as we talked about in the rate setting discussion, we need to take a closer look at our parcel data, so we're estimating less parcels than previous years, so that's why it's more than the $85 that we mentioned at town meeting.
I just want to let everybody know, I got 2 envelopes today from the town of Rutland.
Yep, me too.
One,
Is there any money in one?
wanting money, yeah. One was the tax bill, the other was the stormwater bill. Okay.
You guys are good, you've been home, I haven't been home.
made my daughter go out and get the mail.
Okay, is there any other business to come before the board in open session? If not, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, subject Fafford v. Town of Rutland, civil number 2462 CV 1421. And reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, subject Worcester/DCR sewer matter. To adjourn from, to not return to open session, to adjourn from executive session. Thank you, Harry.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, Harry.
second, aye.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you.